ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Rendes, also known as Ricky Franz, and a great episode for you today, a fun episode for you today. Today we have fan favorite and somebody that I always love hanging out with for a couple hours, Dr. Jessica Rose, and we also have first-time guest, Dr. Pierre Kory, which you guys might know from the Joe Rogan podcast. He had an appearance on there with Brett Weinstein from the Dark Horse podcast, and he was also on the Dark Horse podcast with Dr. Robert Malone, and it's a really fun conversation. And as you know, I always try to make these shows casual, a little bit of information, a little bit of fun and silliness. And what I love about having Dr. Jessica Rose on the call with me is that she naturally brings those elements out of people. So really fun conversation. We start off shooting the shit, really having fun, really casual. And then as the show continues, we go into more detail, more current events, more analyzing the whole COVID thing and the science and all that stuff. So starts off kind of silly, talking about some of our personal lives, some of our personal stories, but I think it's also fun and interesting to see those other aspects, those other sides of guests and hear a little bit about their own personal stories and perspectives and stuff. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. Also, remember, this is a Valley for Valley show. If you can financially support the show, and I know all of you guys can't, but if you can, if you're in a good financial spot, please consider giving some value back if you get some value out of these conversations. One way of doing it, I have a PayPal account. If you want to donate that way, you can, and many of you have, and I really, really appreciate everybody who has taken the time to donate something and also write a little message. It's inspiring, it's motivational, and it's a little reminder to keep doing what I'm doing because people are appreciating it. Also, Patreon. I have a Patreon page if you want to support us on Patreon, and if you do, once a month I do a Patreon podcast exclusively with my Patreon supporters. Then I release it as a episode. So when you see me do episodes called Ricky Rants with Fans or Patreon podcasts, that's with my Patreon supporters. And if you want to be a part of that, donate as little as $1. If you can afford just donating as little as $1, you can participate in the Patreon podcast, and you're helping contribute to the goal of eventually doing this full time. And that's all everybody would have to do. Donate as little as $1. It goes a long way. If everybody donated as little as $1, I could finally say goodbye to my full-time job and officially be a full-time podcaster, which is, as you guys know, the goal. And then I also have a merch store. If you want to buy some gear, if you want to buy some hats, we now carry hats, mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, whatever you need, we have it. And if you need that stuff, why not contribute to the podcast and get the clothes that you're looking for? So another great way of supporting the show. We also have a Rockfin channel, which is a YouTube alternative. It's a video platform, but what makes this one unique is, one, it's uncensored, so it doesn't censor us from having these type of conversations. And as you guys know, I've been banned off YouTube, so now I don't put my full episodes on YouTube anymore. So Rockfin and other platforms like Float, BitChute, Odyssey, those are the places you go to for information and for alternative perspectives on what's going on in the world. So support those platforms, specifically Rockfin. You can tip content creators. If you enjoy a specific episode, you can tip that episode. And also, just by watching our videos on that platform, you are supporting the content creators. So that goes a long way. Subscribe to us. There's tons of free stuff. So if you don't want to sign up for anything, if you just want to enjoy all the free videos and all the free content that's on there, you can. And then if you really like the platform, you can sign up and enjoy all the premium content. I also have a crypto wallet if you want to donate that way. So there's plenty of different ways that you can donate to the show and support the show. And if financially you can't support the show, no worries. Share the show, review the show, subscribe to the show on any of the platforms you use. And you can go to the rippleeffectpodcast.com or rickyvranz.com to find all the places you can find the Ripple Effect Podcast audio and video. And you can also click on support and find all the links to ways of supporting the show. I also have a Telegram chat. If you want to connect with myself or other listeners, check out the Telegram chat. People share thoughts, ideas, articles, And if you're anti any of the mainstream social media platforms, it's a great alternative where you can connect with people in the community. That's it. Finally, enjoy the podcast, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Very.
Somebody doing research?
Yeah, who's that? Is that you, Jessica?
Yeah, I'm watching this show on like the origins of Jesus's burial site, or like whether or not this place that they found in Talpiot is Jesus's burial site. It's really interesting. They found 10 ossuaries with like inscriptions on them, and wow. Anyway, yeah, it's really interesting. How are you?
Hi, Jessica. Hey, Ricky. I was just basically trying to come out of a coma and drinking coffee. So,
okay.
I wasn't as intellectually engaged as you were, Jessica. Jesus, Jesus, literally and metaphorically.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph, and it's
exactly. No, I had a hell travel day last night, and like a 6-hour delay at an airport. We got home late, and then you'd like this, Jessica. I had to finish a Substack for some reason. I was up till like 3:30 in the morning finishing a Substack. So, all the cool kids have Substacks, Jessica. So I had to jump in.
It's true. Man, I enjoy Substack so much, and it seems like everyone who writes them at very strange times of night. Like I'll wake up at 2 and 3 in the morning, just wake up and I'll be like, gotta write a Substack. And I'll finish it in like 1 hour or 2 hours. And it's just like a weird inspiration from somewhere.
Yeah, I take little notes. Now I'm going through my days, like on my notes app on my phone. I'm like, write something about this, write something about that, write something about this. And then I'm like, what do I want to write about today? And then I look at my notes. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. It's like a diary. And every day there's something to write about. And I'm amazed at the feedback too. It's like,
yeah, people like it.
Yeah, they love it. And they actually do give good feedback. It's like the new peer review.
Yeah, right. It's cool. It's cool. I mean, I read yours every day or whenever you put it out. And so I'm a big fan. Anyway, I think Ricky, probably me and Jessica, we could just talk for a couple hours if you just want to record it and just, I guess, stand by. I don't know. Hey, Ricky, nice to meet you.
I was planning on doing that. I wasn't going to. I was just going to let you guys flow.
He wouldn't have said anything if he didn't say something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, wait, before we go any further, Jessica, I just had to bring this up to you. 2 questions for you. Where the fuck are you, and what the fuck was with that spider?
Okay.
There's 2 fucks right there. 2 fucks. I give 2 fucks. I want to know where you are and why that spider was in your fucking house.
Yeah, it still is, and I don't know where he is.
I would not be where you were.
Let's not summon him, okay? So,
if I remember that correctly, you said that you were gonna let it just hang, like you were just gonna keep a lookout.
Ricky, yesterday I was on a call, and he's sitting there 6 inches to my right, looking at me. I swear to God, the spider wants to be my friend, and I don't mind, but I'm not ready for that. I'm still.
What, too fast, too soon, Jessica? Is that
exactly.
what it is? Okay.
It's too fast for the arachnophobe in me. So can you guys see that? Like,
wait, let me see. I saw it. Who? I think it was Matthew Crawford who put it on his Substack. I was laughing my ass off. I thought it was insane.
So do you see him?
Yeah.
The size of him? So he's a big guy or a girl.
Does he have fur? Does he have fur?
No fur, but like circular markings and pointy legs, and moves really slowly. So like really not like a wolf spider, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh, God damn.
Big. So yeah, I do have lingering arachnophobia.
But wait, where's that spider? What country?
Israel. So it's the biggest one I've seen in 15 years of living in Israel. Now we do have large spiders here, but they're generally like, they're not living in your apartment type thing. And so like I woke up one day and I saw him on my ceiling and I'm like, well, that's a big one. hope he doesn't fall on my head when I'm on a call. And so he fell on my head during a call. That's what that was, like in the middle. And I had this like lack of like, what the hell?
Excuse me. Where is the Substack about this spider? I mean, you guys have a deep and now long-standing relationship. This needs to be explored in a Substack. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll do a continuing saga.
Yeah.
He was watching me yesterday and my cat brought it to my attention. And I swear to God, I blew on him because that's what I do to make animals go away.
Oh gosh.
You know, like this.
Yeah, sure.
He disappeared. It's like he just disappeared like a ghost. And I haven't seen him since, so I don't know where he is. He's fine.
Hey guys, I'm overheating in my house. Hold on, I'm gonna put on a shirt. This little sweater's too.
Yeah, you have a nice fire going there.
Yeah, I do. It was cold and now it's hot. Hold on, let me cool off.
Happy birthday, brother! If you ever watch this, which you probably won't.
Oh, that's right. It's your brother's birthday, right?
Yeah, he's 50 today.
So how many siblings do you have? Is it just you two or?
3. Yeah, I have a twin sister, a younger sister, and an older brother.
Wait, you got a twin sister?
Yeah. we didn't discuss that.
No, because I would have told you I'm also a twin.
What?
Yes.
Wait a minute. We must have known this about each other.
No, I don't know how many.
You're a twin?
Yeah.
Wait, you're a fraternal twin, right?
No.
You're an identical twin?
If I I don't know what your experience was growing up, but you go through a little bit of an identity crisis when you're a twin. So
yeah.
Coming from like,
we just found out that we're both identical twins.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you identical twin as well?
Yeah,
I am, yeah. But
That's
Ricky,
great.
Yeah, I knew you had a brother. I didn't know you had a sister. Never mind, a twin sister. Yeah, I wasn't aware of it. Yeah, did you go through that identity crisis thing? I've talked about it on the show a few times with like other guests when it gets brought up about how coming to the States, being kind of poor, and my parents were farmers from Portugal. It was just easier to dress us the same all the time when they're so it's like I went through this identity crisis of like, people would constantly, so my brother's name is Bruno and my name's Ricardo, Ricky, whatever people prefer. But people would always go, oh, which one are you, Ricky or Bruno? And before you could answer, they would just continue talking like you were one and the same. And,
I know what you're talking about.
yeah. Did you?
Wow.
So you went
Yeah,
through the thing?
I was very, and I still am pretty hardcore about my individuality. And I've always assumed it's because I'm an identical twin. And I really hated that stuff. Like, especially from guys, like guys would be like, are you Mary Jesse? Who cares? Doesn't matter. You're interchangeable. And I'm like,
oh yeah, I have no frame of reference, but I can just imagine that would just kill me.
really annoying. It's like, so I don't know if that forged me being really independent, or if I was before, and that's why it pissed me off so much. It's probably a bit of both. So my sister always wore red and I always wore blue, so my parents could tell us apart, because they they mixed us up sometimes too. But we went to separate schools all the time because we used to get into a lot of trouble. Like if we were together, we were raising hell. So it was better if we weren't together. Probably my fault. And yeah, we kind of separated geographical location at 17. She went to Dalhousie in Nova Scotia, and I stayed in Newfoundland. So yeah, it wasn't too intense, but I do remember having, being annoyed by it sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely was. I could see as we got older, we would, maybe it was subconsciously, but we would, if one person liked one thing, we would go in the other direction to kind of just be individuals and kind of have our own, I don't know, build our own legacy, or just be looked at as a individual and not a combination of two individuals. So yeah. It's weird. I wonder too how much of that impacted me going maybe in a whole nother direction, maybe how much of it was just rebelling against wanting to be my own person and my own thinking and all that stuff. when I see adult twins still dress the same and embrace the whole, I'm like,
Isn't that weird?
super weird. I don't get it at all. Like I'm
Wait, adult, because I know sets of twins that are friends with my children, and actually my brother-in-law has twins. I always freak out because they're both sets that I know constantly identically dressed, and it freaks me out. I'm like,
Weird.
who's doing that, the twins or the parents? And in one case they claim it's the twins, they really want to be the same, and so maybe it's something you grow out of. I have no idea, but it freaks me out.
Yeah, it is kind of weird because it's like, okay, yeah, right, we shared a womb for a while, but we're still
Cute.
different.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's when you're little, and then as an adult, it's weird. Like
Let's
stop.
grow out of that.
It's, yeah, I mean, I guess you could if you live in a small apartment, you could share one job, and one can take one day, the other one can take the weekends if you have plans or whatever. You can just share.
Alternate eating.
You get a lot of those dumb.
Yep.
Too, right? I'm sure you got like, hey, do you feel when he gets hurt? Do you feel it? Do you have this this? I don't know. They thought it was like some psychic ability because you're a twin. And I think when you're around somebody, I think naturally when you're a twin, it's just like a sibling or a child. When you're around somebody long enough, you do get a sense of like when something's wrong almost. But I think a lot, like it's not because you're a twin. I just think when you're the same age and you're, obviously we actually have different birthdays. I was going to say share birthdays, but we don't share birthdays because I was born after midnight. So I was born April.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's funny. What's weird is my mother didn't tell me till like I found out as like a teenager. One day I was like, she's like, oh, it's stupid. Twins should have the same birthday. So forever I thought my birthday was April 19th. And one day I was like filling out paperwork in school and they're like, you filled in the wrong birthday. Your birth certificate says April 19th. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I went home and told my mother and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what do you, she's like, oh,
that's so cool, man. I love that story. That's really interesting.
I thought, like, if anything, because I had similar type of feelings like Jessica, I wanted to be an individual. So I was like super excited to find out that I had my own birthday, So
Nice.
So that it's weird, but twins are also a part of many people use them as the study to or explain the studies of like nurture, nature, if you separate them, what ends up happening? Do they have similar
smoking?
Yeah,
those are the ones. Like one twin smokes and the other one doesn't, and one looks like a demon and the other one doesn't. I like those ones. I used to get this one a lot. What's it like being a twin? And my only answer, and it was very immediate, was I've never not been one. I have no idea.
Good answer. Good answer.
That is a good one.
I like that.
You can use that.
This is a typical Jessica and Ricky podcast. Sorry, Dr. Kory. This is we go off.
I'm with you guys. I'm just slow to catch up. I'm tired today, but it's
That's
okay.
Where were you? Where did you fly?
I was in Utah skiing. And you know what? You may or may not know him, but the other night I had dinner with Daniel O'Connor.
Daniel O'Connor,
CEO of Trial Site News.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, right. So I mean, he's part of the club, right? It's a small club, Jessica. There's like 20 people in it, right? It's the same fucking cast of characters everywhere. You're one of them. Actually, I was going to say one other thing. When you said that your brother's 50 and I guess he's older, does that put you what? You're in your 40s somewhere?
47, yeah.
47. Because a theory that I developed, and it's not a perfect theory, it doesn't have a perfect fit to the slope, okay? But so many of this cast of characters seem to be right around 50, right? So like I'm 51, you're 47.
I noticed that too.
Brett Weinstein 51, Chris Martinson 51. With the exception of like maybe Steve Kirsch and Robert Malone. I mean, everyone's and I don't know how old Matt Crawford is, but everyone's right around 50. Like the people that are like fighting on the front lines and making noise, trying to do the right thing. It's just this interesting, seemingly like congregation around the age of 50. So it's cool.
I have noticed the same thing actually. And I was wondering if it just has something to do with like in my older years, I care a lot less about everything. And it's like, I got no time for political correctness. It's like, let's just tell the truth and get on with it.
Well, it could be like lack of maybe less inhibition, but I also think there's a level of maybe confidence and skill, like, because you can't speak out loud at 35 unless you really know what you're talking about. And 50 seems to be a zenith or a peak of like intellectual, and you know, hopefully it doesn't go downhill from here, Jessica, but you know, you know, and if it does, I'll say I had a good run, man. I was hitting it right at the time that I was needed, you know.
Exactly.
But you know, I do think, yeah, because I don't think I could have been. I mean, I certainly, there's no way I could have done what I'm doing now at 35. I mean, I knew nothing at 35. So,
And it is a confidence thing. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, it's definitely something that's developed. So yeah, you're probably onto something there.
Here, I'll give you guys a fun fact about me. I don't have a twin, but I finished training as a physician at the age of like 39 years old.
You're in the restaurant business prior to that.
Yeah. So like, I haven't, that's why I'm saying, like, at 35, I didn't even, I was still like tapping reflex hammers on people's knees and shit. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah. So, and I always remind my colleagues in the FLCCC of that I'm like a little baby, you know, like Maduri and Marek, they've been a doctor for like 30 plus years. And like, I've been only out there for like 11 or 12. So it's fun. I'm the little baby in the FLCCC family.
Do you think that gave you a different perspective on things? Like because you went in later in life, you were maybe more curious about what you're being taught and looking at things from different perspectives, where when you're really young and you get directly into the university, it's easier to mold somebody's perspectives at that age.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't know if it was because I went late or had a career outside. But there was definite differences between me and the entire rest of the medical school class, as well as my residency classmates. Is I was way more, I did not sweat the small stuff. And I was just way more chill. And I think I was a little bit more confident. Like I'd already been through so much trying to get to medical school, and I was older. I just remember like everyone in medical school, like literally head down studying 14 hours a day. And what's interesting about me in medical school is I knew I was not a good learner in a lecture. I don't learn well from lectures. I can't listen for an hour. I love the printed word. And so I didn't go to classes. And it wasn't because I was like smarter than the average, but I just knew that's not how I learned. I needed to see the printed word. And I was a windsurfer. I went to school in Grenada, like offshore, because I'll give you a little fun fact why I was in the restaurant business all in my 20s, is that I kind of pretty much failed out of college. And so, you know, I had to win. Yeah. Actually, I think I read that. You did that in one of your Substacks. You talked about the same. And I remember being like my sister right there. So
same thing. I flunked out and I was in the restaurant business for 15 years.
So here's the thing, Jessica. I don't have a twin, but I did flunk out of college, and I did spend almost a decade in the restaurant.
You, man.
Hey, my wife's in the restaurant business. I mean, I'm sure becoming a PhD is very difficult, but the restaurant business isn't easy either. So
no, not at all. No, and so, yeah. So when I got to, and the other thing is, and I think Jessica liked this because she's got surfing, but I've been a windsurfer since I was about 11. And when I was in Grenada, my little apartment that I shared with some classmates was just up the hill from like the big lecture halls. And every day, because the wind blew in the morning in Grenada, like while these legions of people were going to class in this beautiful lecture hall, which overlooked the ocean, you know, I was carrying my sail on my head going down the hill. And literally the entire class was like, what the hell is with that guy? And I would literally put the board and sail in the water. And then I was out there. I was literally on this gorgeous blue ocean windsurfing while everybody else is in class. And I think it really pissed people off. But at the same time, I was up all night studying. I really studied hard. It wasn't like it came easy to me. That's how I worked. And so it was an interesting time.
Well, yeah, in my last postdoc, I had an amazing advisor. I suppose he was my advisor. It was his lab and I worked there. And he he was also athletic, and he really respected the fact that I was a hardcore surfer. Like I even do it competitively. So he'd come into my little room one day, you know, looking to ask me a question about some results from an experiment or something. And here I am watching surfing videos. on YouTube. And he's like, okay, I'll come back. And meanwhile, I didn't get there till 11 because I was surfing all morning, but he really didn't mind. He was like, I don't care how you get me good results, just, as long as you get me good results. I think it's really important to like fuse your, like the true passions of your life together to get like the best product from all of them. It's like, it's so not, I've never been in the box like thing, like, oh, to work from this hour to this hour. And I also don't learn from, I actually am an auditory and a visual learner. So yeah, the written word is good. But I just can't pay attention for more than 35 minutes. It's like, if you're talking about something longer than that, unless the subject changes. So
well, you know what I found, Jessica, it was not only the attention span, but I'm like a really speedy guy. Like I eat fast, I walk fast, I move fast. Like, waiting for the information to come out of the professor's mouth, like at talking speed was like, come on, dude, I can rip through what you're going to say in the next half hour in about 10. So can you just give me like the notes and I can rip through this and then go windsurfing?
Yeah, I get it. Put him on 2 times speed, like you can do with.
I love that you can do that now. I was just don't tell Dr. Bean this, but he did a wonderful lecture the other day on Omicron, and I was listening to it. And again, I don't have 40 minutes to listen, and so, but I put it on 2 times speed. At 20 is awesome, and I ripped through, and it was great. I love his lectures. His little artwork is so great, and so it was awesome. It was awesome. Hey, you guys didn't see this, but last night we did a really great, I'm going to show you a picture. We did a really great webinar. We talked about this new huge study on ivermectin, and I want to show you. So do you know who Flavio Cottajani is, Jessica?
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, so Flavio is part of the FLCC. He's probably like one of the world experts in the clinical and research of COVID. He's from Brazil and he's run a bunch of trials. He did like the proxalutamide trials. He's an endocrinologist and like all the anti-androgen aspect of it.
Oh, nice.
And he's helped us with our protocols. Really great guy, but he has 2 cats. And every time he's on our webinar, his cats come out just like this. And last night, so he's got 2 huge cats, Ken and Barbie. And I want to show you, now I screwed up. Where is it? Ken and Barbie, and let me show you. I think this is Barbie. So,
holy moly!
Look at that picture. How hilarious is this? Look at the mug on that cat.
And it's polydactyl too. Oh my gosh, what a gorgeous!
Isn't that a gorgeous cat?
Beautiful. That's Barbie, right?
That's Barbie. Yeah. And so anyway, and it's so cute because we'll be talking about like in-depth, science and data topics, and all of a sudden Barbie comes out, and I always have to interrupt. I'm like, all right, let's hang out with Barbie for a bit. Now, what's your cat's name?
You don't have a choice anyway, unless
you don't. What's your cat's name?
This is Checkpoint.
Checkpoint.
Yeah.
As in checkpoint inhibitor or checkpoint Charlie or what?
I don't know. I got him named Checkpoint. Actually, his name was CP. So look at him, isn't he gorgeous? And anyway, so I rescued him. He was left behind in an apartment, and I saw a picture of him on Facebook, and I'm like, bring him to my house now. And so yeah,
That's cute. Yeah, he's lovely. Hey, Ricky, is this the podcast?
I think it is.
Because we could just riff all day. I mean, I'm having a blast. But I don't know if you want to do more formal, but we could just shoot. This is what I call shooting the shit. We just sit back and riff.
I enjoy this because people, obviously a lot of the people who come on, they've done multiple interviews on other shows, and
yes,
I think one of the appeals, Joe, when I started in 2013, one of the things I really liked about Joe Rogan's podcast was how casual the conversations were. So you would get a different perspective. You'd get stories out of the guests that you wouldn't get if it wasn't an organic conversation. So I've always loved that because I'm like, I love meeting people. I love hearing their stories. I love how conversations are like a journey. Like you never know where it's going to go when somebody brings something up that reminds you of something else. And then you go there, so I did, when Dr. Robert Malone was on, because I'm Portuguese and he raises Portuguese horses. So he goes to Portugal from time to time. The first like 20 minutes was about Portugal, and I'm like, oh, people are gonna be so pissed. I have the inventor of the mRNA vaccine on, and we're just spouting out about Portuguese culture and the country and stuff. But I think people enjoy also seeing that side of people, because it reminds you that they have other passions and they have other things that make them interesting, and they're just normal people too, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because I think sometimes when you're just going through science and all that stuff, it's like,
yeah, I mean, especially I'm sure Jessica and I mean, we have our specialty, our knowledge bases that people want to hear from us, and yeah, I've certainly put it out there everywhere. So it's nice to just like when I go on with Chris Martinson, he and I, you know, he's a little bit more formal, but we talk about anything. Listen, you just brought up a thought. So here's the question. You know how long I've known Robert Malone and been working with him?
no idea.
No.
Since November of last year, before he was Robert Malone. And I'll tell you why it's so interesting to me, because what happened was I finished our review. So the ivermectin story with the FLCCC happened because we'd been studying all the therapeutics the entire time, and we were updating our protocols and doing all this stuff. And Paul Marek, there was a time, it was around October of 2020, and he was reviewing, you know, there's a whole bunch of trials that came out at the same time, like on hydroxychloroquine and tocilizumab, ivermectin, a bunch of other stuff. And it was all pretty much negative, but ivermectin was like peeking its head above, like it was just like positive, 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 positive. And so Paul saw the signal. Paul put together a PowerPoint lecture saying that ivermectin would end the pandemic in like mid-October of 2020. And I was like, what the hell is Paul talking about? What's this drug? Why is he so excited about it? So I dove in right behind him, and I just started reading and putting together the papers, and we put together this review paper. And as I was putting together, I was like flipping out. Like I was like trembling, because I was like, this drug is the COVID killer. And so I put together this review paper, and I put it up on a preprint. November 13th was the first draft. And right around that time, people saw the preprint, and they saw us. You know, we were already known because we had been advocating for steroids and all that. And then people started to reach out. And what happened was there was this pediatrician in Philadelphia, a woman named Alexis Lieberman, who had known that ivermectin was effective since March of 2020. She'd been treating all of her friends and colleagues, and she knew that when she gave it to them, they were better within a day or two. And she was like, literally, like, just going after everybody, you know, doing the same stuff that we were doing with steroids, writing to government officials, health ministers, you know, everywhere, trying to tell everyone that we had something that worked for COVID. And when she saw that our group had, you know, identified and, you know, was now advocating for ivermectin use, she put me in touch with a guy named Robert Malone. Now, I never knew who Robert Malone was, but at the time, what he did is he proposed to this journal, Frontiers in Pharmacology, he proposed a special issue, which was going to be called The Use of Available Drugs in the Treatment of COVID-19, basically repurposed drugs. Yep. Smart guy, way ahead of the game. He knew that the entire response was failing, and he wanted a way for there to, you know, to disseminate science around repurposed drugs. And so, I mean, and he, you know, he's been in the business and publishing and doing clinical research for decades. It's what he does, especially in pandemics. And he saw that there was this huge void. The journal Frontiers in Pharmacology accepted him, made him a special issue editor and he had a few colleagues from Italy. And so Alexis said, hey, there's this special issue coming out in this journal. You should submit it there. I think they want your paper. So I submitted to Robert, and there began what is now, you know, a year-plus relationship. He and I worked very closely. So he was my editor for that first, I would call it a landmark paper. But here's the point of the story, which is I find so interesting because I laugh every time I see him. I tell him this. During the time of the paper, as you guys know, I gave this kind of fiery testimony in the Senate that like went viral. And, and Robert, he's so wise. He's been in the business forever, and he knows, and he was just sitting back, and we would talk a lot, and he'd be like, he was watching to see how like I was becoming like quite well known, getting a lot of attention. And I think I asked him, like, how come you don't do this or that or the other thing? And he told me one day, he goes, you know what? I like to hang out in the background because if they don't see you, they don't shoot you. These are the words of Robert Malone circa, I think like January 2021. Mark my words. If they don't see you, Jessica, they don't shoot you. Now let's fast forward to January 22. Did Robert follow his own damn advice? That guy is public enemy number one with a target this big.
I have no idea who he is. He's
Yeah, but
so incognito.
But here's the other thing about that story is that I never knew he had this unbelievable science career that it was his work and perspiration and intelligence that led to the development of getting mRNA into the cells. I mean, this is like a serious scientist, and he was high up in government research circles and in pandemic responses. I mean, the guy's CV is just over the top, and so all of a sudden, we went through this whole scandal around the paper because, as you guys know, like. It passed through rigorous peer review. It was about to be published, and all of a sudden the journal sat on. You guys know that story?
Yeah.
It's one of the, this new era of like retracting inconvenient science articles. Wait, Jessica, do you know anything about that? About articles of inconvenient science that get retracted? No, you wouldn't. Okay, I'll tell you about it sometime. Maybe now. Or maybe I'll tell my story and then you can tell yours.
Sure, I can tell you what I don't know about.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, what happened was the journal was sitting on our paper, and literally I was starting to get chest pains every day because people were dying last winter. I mean, the waves, the surge last winter. And we were like, this paper has to get out. There's everyone dying. The FLCCC was like in daily distress. And so I was writing increasingly heated letters to the editorial panel of the journal. I was like, it's an online journal. Like, and it's a crisis. And this is a landmark paper. Like, it was literally the solution. And we were like, please publish, please publish. And then all of a sudden one day, I think I got a call from Robert. I think it was from Robert. It was a letter. Yes, Robert called me because he had a call with the editor because the editor said they had concerns about the paper. And then Robert calls me and he had to deliver the bad news. And he basically told me that the paper was getting retracted and they weren't going to publish it.
Oh.
And I will say, and Robert would agree with me, that he and I he believed it more than I did. The FLCCC, we knew the fix was in. We knew this was bullshit. We knew this was like some powerful interest moving in to whack this paper. Robert actually trusted the editor at that time.
Yeah.
Because the editor was saying like the paper is, he just made all these points like it's not well supported with the data. By the way, this paper went through 3 rounds of peer review with senior governmental scientists from the Defense Threat Reduction Agency and the NIH, seasoned clinician. There's actually 4 different people who reviewed it, and they whacked the paper. Like I had to really write and rewrite and rewrite. Yeah. So this was a mature paper with conclusions that were found to be defensible by independent peer reviewers that got whacked. And so Robert had to, deliver the bad news, and we were crushed. We were like, I cannot believe this paper is getting retracted. I mean, the world needs to know about ivermectin. And anyway, so that was Robert. And so we were very close for a long time. We talked frequently and changed emails, and we had chats. And then there was a time where, like, I don't know, we both did our things in the pandemic. And all of a sudden, this guy named Robert Malone starts showing up places, talking serious smack about the vaccines. And I'm like, Robert? I was like, wait, what? I was like, Robert Malone. It was so interesting, Jessica. Like the guy that I'd been like close with, and we'd become collegial and shared, like, because Robert's older and wise. He was giving me advice on different things, and then all of a sudden he's coming out and he's like this very well spoken, really intelligent, and people, and he became like this unbelievable public figure. And I had never tweeted before the pandemic, and I tweet now and I have a nice following. Like Robert Malone, suddenly he comes out, he's tweeting, and he's got like 400,000 Twitter followers. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? If they can't see you, they don't shoot you. And he's got 400,000 Twitter followers. He's tweeting about vaccines all day. I was like, what the hell? Not anymore. Anyway, so that's my Robert Malone story. I thought you guys would like it. So
Well, well, you referenced Jessica's paper with Dr. Pierre McCullough, and do you want to get into that story a little bit?
Yeah.
Come on, Jess, we got to trade retraction stories. How did yours go down, my friend?
Well, first of all, do you know that Robert got booted off LinkedIn again?
Like since Twitter?
Yes. No,
Oh,
he got booted off LinkedIn. He got put back on.
I know that one.
Off again. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Crazy.
it's a war. I mean, it's literally a war where, here's the question before we go into your story, because I'm going to pose you a question. Could you answer for me, how the fuck am I still alive on Twitter?
I was just going to ask you that actually, because I don't know.
How am I alive on Twitter?
The algorithms I don't know what it is. It's weird.
It can't be an algorithm. It can't be an algorithm because the stuff that I tweet, people will retweet and get busted and slapped and striked and all that stuff. So like my stuff, if it comes out from someone else, they'll like message me and be like, "Hey, I reposted or retweeted or did something that you did," and like I got whacked.
Them off.
Yeah, not like kicked off, but they'll get like whatever strikes or the tweet will be taken down. Now, so they don't do that to me, but I'm pretty sure. I have what Brett Weinstein calls Twitter molasses. Like my tweets will go out on fire and then like just get stuck in the mud and like really slow down. You know? And so I have like lots of Twitter molasses around me, but anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know how I'm alive. I mean, Robert, I don't, although I am as deeply researched and knowledgeable about the vaccines and the data around the vaccines, and have been since January of 2021, because, Chris Martinson, who also I became friendly and collegial with, he was calling attention from like January 10th last year. That VARS was starting to blow up. And so like, that's been on my radar, scientifically. And, since then I have followed this vaccine saga. And so, but I don't, as the FLCCC, first of all, there was, and probably still is a little bit, there was a spectrum of opinions on the vaccines. And also we felt as an organization, we could not fight two fronts of this war at the same time. Yep. And so I don't really go into vaccines. And so you'll see I tweet very rarely on vaccines. And so that may be one reason, but it doesn't explain why other people get whacked on my ivermectin stuff.
But the ivermectin thing's really hot. Like that got one of the only videos that I did an interview with this Irish guy, and I say that, I don't censor myself. And his video was up for less than 24 hours, and then it got booted off. And he says it was probably because I used the word ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. But I don't know how my YouTube videos are still up. I saw a video that explored this, the reason why it was with Patrick Bet-David, because he also has videos up that should not be up according to, the
algorithms. Yeah.
But they are, and he put it onto numbers. It's just a numbers game. Once you get this many views, then they pay attention to you, and then you're a threat, and then they boot you off. So I don't know if it's that, or because I only have like 4,000 subscribers on my YouTube, and I'm really,
so maybe you're under the radar because of that. If you get 400, you say the wrong word and you're gone. There's a journalist named Matt Taibbi. I'm sure you guys may be familiar with him, but he got on and interested in ivermectin at one point, and he's friends with Brett Weinstein. And so he did an interview with me, and he wrote a piece about ivermectin. I think it was me and the FLCCC. It wasn't as positive as I clearly laid it out for him, but anyway, but in the article, I always remember this. He called me the ghost of the internet, because literally there was a time where wherever I went, it was different. As I got everybody ghosted. Like, poor Dr. Bean lost a lot of money. Brett Weinstein got like a huge hit. Like, so wherever I went, people were getting like whacked, getting strikes on YouTube, videos getting demonetized, taken down. And so like, I was kind of a toxic guest, Ricky. That was then. I don't know if it's the same now, but I hope I don't cause any financial hardships to you by being on today.
Well, it's all right, because one thing I was going to mention was I was on YouTube I have been on YouTube since I started the show in 2013. And for some reason, even after Dr. Robert Malone was on my show, I was going under the radar too. And I thought it was a subscriber thing. I mean, my channel was, not small, but it wasn't like huge either, because most of the people who listen to these conversations download them on iTunes, or they do it, use it on a phone or on an app. But I'm like, oh, so I assumed the same thing. I was going under the radar because maybe the channel just wasn't huge on YouTube. And then other people that in the podcast community with much smaller channels were getting censored. And I knew it was a matter of time. I remember Dr. Malone emailing me the day after I put the show up, and he's like, how is it still on YouTube? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, I've been kind of going under the radar. And I had Dr. Robert Malone on, I had Dr. Peter McCullough, and then eventually, like out of nowhere, I don't know if it's like they just have a hard time keeping track of everything, and they just kind of eventually get to you. Everything just started getting strikes here, strikes there, and it was hilarious because I'm like, you're telling me that I have medical misinformation when I have medical doctors on the show, which is, I'd love to see the PhD of the fact checkers that are giving me these strikes. Yeah. So now I'm not on YouTube, and I just post clips on there, and I try to put up not so controversial stuff that will get me in trouble, but I'm on all other platforms. Thank God, because when one door closes, another one opens, and these other platforms are growing because of the censorship of YouTube. I'm on Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey. I'm literally on every platform that that's out there. Minds, and just trying to get the information out there. And my show's all open source, so I tell people, like, post it anywhere you want. I just want the conversations to get out there. So hopefully, some people are uploading it on YouTube and they can get the strikes. But it's the censorship was one of the first indications that something was wrong, I think, for many people, because when you're suppressing medicines and you're suppressing, when Cuomo in New York, and I know you're a New Yorker, do you still live in New York, Scott?
No, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, but my heart's still there.
Yeah. When Cuomo made it illegal for a doctor to use, what was it, hydroxychloroquine how is that even a thing? How can a politician be involved with a relationship between a doctor and a patient? There's all these and really, Dr. Kory, I think you deserve a lot of credit to why I think Rogan and his power and influence has now completely turned a corner, because your interview with on there with Dr. Brett, or with Brett Weinstein, I think was one of the first interviews, and I know he called it like an emergency podcast. One of the first interviews where I'm like, I think Rogan's finally starting to see, like, these aren't coincidences. These aren't just like, it's too, and that's what I love about Brett, because Brett would really just nail it down, and he was, he could see it, and he's like, no, this isn't just a coincidence. They're suppressing this, they're suppressing that, they're suppressing, and being a science guy with the science background, he knew something wasn't right. And so I think that first podcast with Rogan and yourself and Brett was the first one that really, I think, this is from the outside looking in, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed like the first podcast where he was really starting to see that there's much more going on.
Oh yeah, he called it. When I met Brett and started talking to him, every time he speaks, I just listen very carefully, because he's very, very pensive guy. He's very thoughtful and obviously extremely intelligent. But he calls them anomalies, right? And then there were so many anomalies with the behaviors of these agencies and the governments that, like, I speak a little bit more plainly. Because he's so measured now. I was like, anomalies, man. These are effing crimes, man. Like I remember last year when the government first. So one of the things that, like, screamed at me as, like, we're in crazy town now, as a physician, was in, like, March or April last year, when the government decided they were going to restrict hydroxychloroquine to hospital patients only, a purported antiviral. And I was like, wait, the government doesn't know that the viral replicative phase is the first 7 days? They don't know that? What dummies. Like, I was actually saying, how stupid that is. That is so stupid. How could you put an antiviral later in the disease and not within days of illness? And I ascribed it, Jessica, to stupidity.
Yeah.
It wasn't stupidity. It was criminality. They were criminals. They did it on purpose. And it took me a while to understand that, like, these things, and I keep saying these non-scientific policies, that devoid and departed from the science over and over and over again, and my whole theme of my life now is like, the only way you can explain non-scientific policies, another way of saying that is policies with financial objectives, right? Those are the objectives, not scientific objectives or public health objectives, they're financial, is if you understand the world and our country and many of the countries as to have all of their agencies captured. They're completely controlled and captured by the pharmaceutical industry. And once you understand that, and you admit that that is actually the reality of our lives, I got to tell you, the world around you becomes a lot simpler. Because when you see the bullshit that they're pulling, like they're literally double and triple jamming those with natural immunity.
It becomes really obvious. It's like,
oh yeah, I mean it's like one theory, like the theory of like relativity, or like the theory that explains everything. It's like, oh yeah, now that I know that all the agencies are captured, everything they do every single day, I'm just like, there you go.
There's no regulatory body.
I would. And now I can predict what they're going to do next day, right? So for instance, when I woke up yesterday morning and the headline was that they just approved boosters for 12 to 17-year-olds.
I can tell you
now,
a story.
As much as that wants me to cry, and as much as that really pains me, I look and I say, of course they did. Of course they did. And you know why? And I'm going to say one last thing, Jess, because I want you to talk about this, but I'm sorry. But when I read I'm going to swear now. I'm going to swear a lot. By the way, I'm a New Yorker. And so when you guys hear F-bombs, it's actually 10% of the F-bombs that I really want to drop. Okay. So keep in mind, like, I'm on my best behavior. Yeah. But I have to be clear here. When you wake up and you read that headline that they're now approving and recommending boosters against this Omicron, toxic boosters against a fucking non-hospitalizable, non-deadly illness, a deadly vaccine for a non-deadly illness. When you read that, it's because these rapacious bastards do not give a fuck about human life.
That's right.
They do not give a fuck about human life. People can die in droves. 200,000 in the opioid epidemic, Bextra, Vioxx, Avandia, vaccines. Vaccines is the I mean, come on, we know what the hundreds of thousands of deaths now just in the US alone from the vaccines. Multiple different papers and analysts and databases are showing the estimates somewhere that was, I don't know, a month ago, between 150 and 200,000 deaths from the vaccines. These people do not give a fuck.
Yeah. There's no doubt about that. I mean, and I think that's probably why a large proportion of people still are having trouble cluing into that, because they can't accept that that's true. I don't know, maybe.
But Jessica, you just nodded your head. They can't accept it's true. It's because they don't know the history of the pharmaceutical industry. It's literally a criminal enterprise. And you're seeing crimes, the magnitude of the crimes, I think, dwarf all of their crimes before, because there are two crimes going on, right? It's the propagation of a toxic medical intervention, one that's so unprecedented in its ill impacts in history.
With two agents that we've never put into people before.
And I would say it's unprecedented for past and future history, because I'd like to believe this will never happen again. But the second crime is the suppression of the now 24 cheap, some over-the-counter, repurposed safe drugs that can treat this disease. So it's basically saying, we're going to jab you here and we're going to starve you from any therapeutics here. And they're literally causing, I don't even know how to say it. I mean, it's causing like a humanitarian catastrophe with like killing off good portions of each country.
Yeah. It's the greatest shit stain in human history. That's what I keep calling it. Yeah, there's no doubt. So do you realize also, maybe the public needs to know this, these advisory meetings, the VRBPAC meetings and the ACEP committee things, I don't know if people realize, I don't even think we realized it when we all started getting into this and thinking, we're going to save the 5 to 11-year-olds by giving our testimony and showing our data and helping these people make the right call. on not putting these into children. They already bought all the supplies from all the manufacturers, by the way. They already had it bought and paid for.
Yeah.
There's no way this was never not going to happen.
No.
They're not even announcing the fucking meetings anymore. They're not even letting us have an opportunity to know that the meetings are happening anymore. So it's like devolving so rapidly. And it's like,
Jessica, so what you said is so true. So like, because I got to tell you, in our circles, right? So let's talk about something positive, which is I get to meet and hang out with people like you.
yeah.
Okay. So like the colleagues and the circle of contacts, like deeply ethical, thoughtful, knowledgeable, and heavily researched, scientists, clinicians, researchers from around the world, right? My circle of contacts has exploded, and I learned something from everybody. But in some of those big circles, and I hate using that red pill, blue pill thing, but like even in the circles of people who know how bad off science and governmental health agencies, how much they've sort of been co-opted, even them, I see constantly these desires to do more trials, and we should do a study on this. And I'm like, now why would you care about doing a randomized controlled trial? Like, literally, are you serious? You think a randomized controlled trial is going to change any of this stuff? Or let's go and try to testify and submit testimony at these fake panel discussions about the safety of vaccines. Like, do you really think that matters? Or in my case, talking to a journalist from a corporate media, like the story's already written, the vaccines are already paid for. It's like the journal's already bought. Like, you're not going to change the world with science anymore. This isn't about data. It's not about science. Science is broken. It's been co-opted. It's like, so like, I hate to be so nihilistic, but like, I see these lovely people, so well-meaning, and they want to do something. They keep thinking, if we just do that one better trial, or that one better sharply worded and reasoned letter, a letter, Jessica, a really strong letter should turn this thing around, don't you think?
Yeah.
No?
I think it's the documentation part that's important. Like, I completely agree with you. Like, there's probably no point in me trying to submit another paper about VAERS data to another, decent journal. But the fact that I'm trying, like, okay, so maybe I'll talk about my paper now, the myocarditis.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Then
I want to hear how it went down. Give me the dirty details of how it happened to you. Yeah.
Right. So, well, it's the third paper that I penned from using VAERS data as a data source for analysis. It was really not controversial. It was just a descriptive analysis of the myocarditis reports in VAERS. I needed, a co-author who knew something about human heart. So Peter is my my co-author, and we wrote the paper together. And so it went through many rounds of review. It wasn't easy. It was they accepted it right away. They were very excited. The current problems in cardiology, and I had lots of good exchanges with the editor-in-chief, and it was published online. We were in the normal process. We were waiting for the galley proofs to arrive. It got immortalized on PubMed.
Yep.
We got the emails like, here, do you want to pay for color figures? It's a little bit more, but you can do that.
As it happens.
Yeah, and we were like, yeah, of course, because the figures lose meaning if they're not in
Hey,
colors.
were you allowed to make it open? Was it going to be open access, or you had to? Right?
Yeah. I think both of Peter and I agree that that's the right thing to do.
Of course.
Yeah. So it wasn't shortly after like signing the contract and paying for the fees that we got we independently were notified by fans, I suppose, from emails, and Peter, a journalist, that our paper was withdrawn. And I was like, what? And so I refreshed the little tab on the link, and it sure enough, beside the title, it said temporarily withdrawn, not even withdrawn, temporarily. And I sent this to everyone I know. And I was like, including Brett Weinstein. And I was like, what's up with this? Like, is this normal? What is this? And everyone was like, no, this isn't normal. Find out what's going on. So neither Peter nor I got an email from the editor-in-chief or the publisher that this was going to happen, which was also really gross. So I emailed them twice in one day. And I said, can you give us an explanation? Like, what the hell is going on here? In a nice way, in a polite way. And it was like later on the next day, we got an email from the publisher saying that they were reconsidering publishing it because it hadn't been an invited paper. And we were like, what? And so Peter said, no. Here are all the examples of you publishing papers that weren't invited before. You have to do better than that. Reinstate the paper or we're going to sue you for a breach of contract. So it was pretty like, you do this or do that.
Are contracts a thing still?
I don't think so. Because
okay. I just had to ask.
We didn't hear from them in a week. And then finally we heard from them and they said, we're not publishing the paper because we don't have to. So it's written in their little thing, rule book that if at any point during the publication process, they can decide not to publish. It's their prerogative to do so.
And same thing with mine. I just wanted to have to interrupt to say one thing. That thing about you said about the refresh, like clicking, being like, what? Like my abstract for the paper, like it said provisional abstract or something. It was over 100,000 views, the abstract. I mean, it was wickedly popular. In fact, when I looked at it, it was probably like the third or fourth most popular abstract for that journal in its history. I think it was the second most popular.
I told them their rating was going to go up because of this paper. I'm like, good for you for taking it on.
and so when the abstract disappeared, I mean, and I think I discovered it because I was like, you're kind of like, you like watching the views. I like that all the attention was getting.
Me too. I was like, oh, look, 30,000. Woo.
But on that day, someone was like, dude, you're done, man. You're down. And I was like, what? And I went to that same thing, click. And I'm like, and I knew the fix was in. I knew we got whacked. And
isn't it heartbreaking? It literally broke my heart. Like I cried. It's because you go through so much to get to that point.
Oh my God.
Realize this. It's like fucking months of torture. And this comes from your heart. I don't know if you feel this way about your writing, but when I write something, it's really from me. And so it's being criticized, which is a hard thing to accept, but okay, you have to. This is the process. And then after that, they just,
I literally felt like I had done something wrong. And like, and Robert believed it because the guy said like, basically they didn't like the optics of the FLCCC. And also I had written them a sharply worded letter. I said, listen, you publish this thing or I'm going public about this. Cause I was almost kind of, I sent them a threatening letter. I mean, by the way, and Robert actually thought that letter is what killed the paper. Excuse me. And he and I both agree now that no, that paper was dead before I even wrote the letter. And so, but literally, but talking about, how you felt, like I literally felt that my behavior, my email, my sharply worded email had caused the loss of life. Like because of my behavior, this paper didn't get published. And had I not done that, and like I literally, you can feel like you want to throw up, right? Because
exactly. And you know what? I just want to give Peter some applause because he doesn't get enough. I'm kidding. He gets. He should have all the applause in the world. But Peter, not one moment wasn't positive, and he made me laugh when I literally felt like throwing up. What you just said is exactly how I felt. I felt like barfing for 7 days. I was like, I was in a frenzy. I was really upset. And he was so calming. And he was like, okay, don't worry. We're going to do this. We're going to win in the end. He was very, very, very kind.
I wouldn't say that I got that support. I like how you described Peter, but what I had was the folks around me, which was Chris Martinson, a guy named Jeff Hansen, he's been in the shadows, but Jeff is this amazing guy. He's actually a real estate investor who's quite wealthy. And he has been so financially supportive of so many great scientists and efforts. I think his role in our sort of advocacy for trying to correct all these wrongs is unsung to date, but it will be. But those guys, like when it happened, I just remember Chris being like, yeah, he was just shaking his head. Yeah, he basically let me know that it wasn't. It's like, it's not you, it's me. Like he was basically telling me, it's not you, it's them. It's like, this is not you, it's them. And so like he definitely relieved some of my feeling that it was somehow I personally played a role in what happened to the paper. And fairly soon, it took me a few weeks. Fairly soon, I was like, oh no, there are some wicked forces out there, man. They got control of all these journals. I mean, basically, someone picked up a call and called the chief editor of this journal. Get rid of that paper now. Otherwise, your car, your kids, your family, your career, you're done. It was probably a very short phone call.
Who don't believe that? That's exactly how this shit goes down. Like we still haven't heard a beep out of the editor-in-chief for this journal. I wonder if he's still okay. And I mean that. I haven't heard a word from him, and he was very kind. And I don't blame him. I don't blame the journal. It's something else. And I can't imagine the pressures being put on all of these other people. I'm not saying that you don't have something to answer for, because everyone has to play their part, right, as a block to this nonsense. But like, I understand the pressure. Like, it must be.
Jessica, but hold on. This is the issue. This is another sort of another theme or insight or just an observation that I keep making is that I really think that one of the ingredients to this slow and fast-moving catastrophe, global humanitarian catastrophe, is the overriding desire for people to remain employed.
Yeah.
Meaning nobody's willing, like there could be whistleblowers, there could be more whistleblowers. And I think if you had more prominent high-level people calling bullshit, like an editor who literally says like, hey, I got a call from some guy who's pressuring me to whack a paper that passed peer review, a prominent academic, I would think that would cause some stuff. And let me finish my story, because my story doesn't end with me. What happened is Robert Malone, who was the editor of the special issue, when they whacked my paper, they actually put a hold on all of the papers that Robert and his colleagues in Italy were responsible for. All about repurposed drugs, right? Because remember, this is a war on repurposed drugs, right? That's a decades-long war. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fluvoxamine, all that stuff. They're only the latest in the war. But Robert actually was writing letters to the editor in dialogue, him and his co-editors, and they pushed it and escalated. They had meetings with the chief editor of all the journals. And by the way, his name is Frederick Fenter. So I just want to call out the cowards in history who did not stand up and did not speak up.
Good for you. There's not enough of that.
Dr. Frederick Fenter in Switzerland. Okay, so he's the chief editor of Frontiers, all of the Frontiers journals. There's about 20 of them. And he got heavily involved in this journal, which we were in, which is Frontiers of Pharmacology. And Robert and his colleagues, the editors, they wrote really excellent, they saying that they were extremely alarmed about these behaviors and how unethical it appeared and how they were really violating scientific principles, the autonomy and the expertise of really expert scientists who are doing these peer reviews. And they escalated so far as to have a meeting. And then Fenter brought out some scientist who tried to defend the actions of the journal scientifically by like putting out these critiques of all, but Robert and his co-editors, they were way smarter than this guy. And it was a very uncomfortable Zoom meeting. You could tell it was a corrupt exercise. And it led to the point where finally Robert and his other editors, they resigned en masse from editing for Frontiers. So they stood up, and it was published in a paper that covers scientific issues. It was called The Scientist. And so there was a paper, again, doesn't get propagated, but eventually they actually had to they had to resign from editing this issue. And yeah, exactly. And so you see how corrupt the whole thing was. And now let's something positive, which is cool. So now I have my paper back. And by the way, you know, the heart and love that you put into the writing, one of the things that I put in was actually perspiration and sweat. And I'll tell you why. Fun fact is I have never successfully learned how to manage a reference editor.
Oh my God, me too. My existence.
So,
if I could hire someone just to do that shit for me, I would.
So my reference editor, I can't get it to do what I want it to do. And so when you have 120 references, my paper was big. It was a really
200.
Yeah, exactly. My Math Plus paper had 200 references. I literally, every time I had to edit it towards the end, like the very end where it was a very mature document, I would have to manually update the 200.
That's what I do. We're hopeless. We need to update.
So so when my thing got wrecked, you know, it wasn't the not only the impacts on humanity, it was also like the dozens of hours of updating the references so that they would be in order.
How can you do this to me after all my reference? Oh, I know, if they knew.
Oh my gosh. So, but
here's
where the story gets better. So, my father is from Romania. He's actually of Hungarian descent. My father is Jewish. I'm not. He married a Roman Catholic. In fact, most of my family was actually exterminated in the Holocaust on my father's side. My grandmother, who I was very close with, is a survivor of Auschwitz, actually.
Wow.
And her sisters actually left and they went to Israel before the deportations. And so of the three sisters, my grandmother actually was deported to Auschwitz, and she was one of the survivors, and she was this amazing woman. But so my father's from Hungary, from Romania, but he's Hungarian. My mother's from France. And what was my point? He had a friend. So when I was a baby, he had a friend who was a psychiatrist. And I grew up on Long Island in New York. And his friend, a guy named Dr. Peter Manu, they were very close. And so I played with his kids and we all played together. And then I think they had a falling out. The couple got divorced. And then, you know, like when couples get divorced, sometimes their friendships get broken. And so we hadn't talked to this man in probably 20, 30 years. And he reached out to me. And
wow.
he wrote me a letter saying that he's an editor of a journal and he'd be very interested in my paper. Now, he wrote this before I submitted my paper to Frontiers in Pharmacology. And his journal, which was called the American Journal of Therapeutics, you know, I'd never heard of it, and it was lower profile, Jessica, a little less impact. The impact factor was less, right? So, you got to go for the biggest impact factor. And so we wanted Frontiers. Yeah, exactly. This is that's actually the voice in my head, like, you know. So I actually, and it was so cool because I hadn't heard from him in 20, 25 years, and he was an editor now, and actually he was an editor at an institution where I have a lot of colleagues who are intensivists there, and he was actually co-editing the journal with a guy that I knew who was a pulmonary and critical care specialist. And so actually I'd lectured for them. I'd been an invited lecturer. Anyway, long story short, I declined his offer. He said, I'd love if you submitted your paper to my journal. And then the whole debacle with the Frontiers happened. So now on the back end, in a puddle of tears and sweat, right? And my little paper, metaphorically, my little paper, because obviously it's digital, right, Jessica? It's not like I'm holding the paper.
I don't know, man. I still have paper.
Yeah, you still have, but I'm sitting there and like I didn't, and people were saying, "Oh, you just got to submit to other journals," and I'm like, "Oh man, reformat those effing references."
I know.
Then
it's like you have no power left to do anything after going through that procedure with one journal. It's like
none.
Just why don't you just resubmit it to another journal?
Are you kidding me? Like you resubmit it. I'm not resubmitting.
Exactly. That's my answer. You freaking resubmit it. I'm not doing that again.
So, Jesse, I think you're my twin sister, by the way. I've decided, but
that's good with me.
The other thing I wanted to say. So then I was just one day, suddenly it was like literally a light bulb. I was like, wait, this is a fully mature paper. It's been deeply peer reviewed. I had the record of the peer reviews. I had the records of all the comments, all of the revisions, everything. I was like, what about if I submit it to, his name is Dr. He goes by Peter, but his real name is Petru in Hungarian. And I said, why don't I send it to Petru Manu? And I found his email and I sent it to him. I said, hey, listen, man, I'm just going to talk I was like, I didn't say it this way, but I was like, man, we caught some bullshit with this paper and I need a home for it, That's not really how I worded the email, but you get it. But, and I explained to him what happened and he was so nice, so kind.
Wow.
And he
Amazing.
said, he was like, this is science.
Yes.
Anytime you have something that's an advance in science, these are the things that happen. Now, I actually think he's a little bit wrong about that. That's the Semmelweis reflex thing, but this is a little bit more than Semmelweis, right? This is sick, sinister, and whatever. But he was very kind, and he carefully looked through all the peer reviews, and he said, "This is an excellent paper. I think it was very well peer reviewed, and it's accepted for publication." And then I had to reformat the references.
Well, that's a good story. Wow.
And then we found a home, and then it got published. And then, by the way, let's finish on a high note on this story. So it got published, and you know what the altmetric score is? You know what that is? Altmetric is this. It's an odd metric. It's a popularity score. And it basically, I mean, it's probably for the ego of scientists and authors, but it's a score which measures the popularity of your paper. So normally papers in traditional science, they get measured by how many times they're referenced, right? If your paper is so important, many other scientists will reference it. This is a lot cooler. This is more modern. It integrates information from like press mentions, social media mentions, tweets, LinkedIn, all these things. And then it puts it into this score. And our altmetric score for our paper made it in science, and the score started in 2011. At one point, we were number 13 out of the last 19 million scientific papers.
Holy moly.
And then you want to know who beat that score? Tess Lawrie, when she did her really erudite systematic review, and her paper actually was even more popular than ours. But that paper became one of the most popular scientific papers published in the last decade. And so it ends on a high note, Jessica, right?
Well, that's inspirational. I mean, the ball's in Peter's court for the destiny of our paper. But I think, if we succeed, and this is as big as I think it might become, because, this is us against Elsevier, and they claim to be, the oldest publisher, and they say that they're full of virtue and blah, blah, blah. But I'm hoping that, if something good comes of this, it might actually be a prototype for people who are being censored not to give up. I don't know how else to see it. We could just resubmit it somewhere else, I suppose, but I'm not sure that that's the destiny of this paper. I also, this happened they censored it 5 days before my speech to the FDA, the VRBPAC meeting for the 5 to 11-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that was coincidental, because one of the things the paper showed is higher, 19 times above background myocarditis rate reports in 12 to 15-year-olds. So younger people, that we were seeing more myocarditis, which everyone's writing about now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they probably didn't want me to talk about that. So I made it the subject matter of what I talked about. I made a point of it, and I even told them it was.
You talked VRBPAC. You told them about the paper and how it got censored.
Yes, I did. So I used it as an opportunity, because it's people, I don't have nefarious motivations here. I think people need to know what we found in this paper. That's my only motivation here. I did some freaking work on my computer. I analyzed some data. I put it together in a nice little package. And I think people should have an opportunity to see what I found. Parents, cardiologists, pediatricians, kids, whoever wants to read it, they should have the opportunity. And if it's full of shit, then, tell me it's full of shit, and we'll have a debate
Show
about
me
it.
how. Show me how it's full of shit. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, but nobody did that. Instead, they just said, we don't want to publish it.
Yeah, by the way, so you know how ours went. One little detail is that I like that you said, show me where I went wrong. So when we were hearing, I heard it through Robert, when I was hearing from Frederick Fenter, that there's another F in there, right? So fucking Frederick Fenter. When he was telling Robert that an anonymous, independent, third-party peer reviewer had looked at our paper because there were concerns about it.
Don't
and
you
this
just hate that,
anonymous independent third felt that our paper was not, the data didn't support the conclusions, and therefore it was an advocacy piece. We were never provided that peer review. We were never shown where we went wrong. We were just told, again, at the time, I think even Robert, as wise as he is, I think we partially believed it, that's actually how it went down. That's not how it went down. That was a mature and well-defensible paper, but but like you said, they told us that we went wrong, but they didn't show us how we went wrong. They just said, "No, you got this wrong, guys. You got this wrong. We're gonna whack the paper."
Yeah, I had something similar. I remember, and one of the reviewers, I had one of those too. They of course, they had beliefs which were modifying their comments.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that has any place in any of the process. It's like, leave your beliefs at home, and when you come to work, be professional. And if I've said something incorrect, then that's okay. I will correct it. But yeah, they also had a problem with the number of references I had, and that they weren't up to date enough. And I'm like, but they're from yesterday. I don't know how much more up to date I can be.
Sometimes lies are lies. Now, by the way, that I have now the honor of having 2 retracted papers in COVID, right? So that's only my first rodeo. We just went through another rodeo just recently. I wrote, so ivermectin, the review for ivermectin was, that was published, it was supposed to be published last January. It ended up getting published somewhere around April in the other journal. But I'd already published in September of 2020, our original paper from the FLC, which was called the Math Plus Protocol, because we're all intensivists, right? So we're ICU specialists. We were not, when this hit, the ICUs, the whole critical care systems around the world got cratered, right? So Lombardy, Italy, and Seattle, and, and New York, just completely crashed. People were landing on ventilators, you couldn't get them off, and all this craziness. And we were screaming, give them steroids, right? You're running out of ventilators because you're not giving them steroids. And so that was like our first kind of rodeo. And we also had a very, multi-combination treatment protocol for hospitalized patients. And we called it Math Plus because the core elements were methylprednisolone, ascorbic acid, thiamine, and heparin. And so that was the biggest paper I'll ever write. It was 13 sections, 200 plus references. We did deep dives on every medicine, its pathophysiology, its clinical trials evidence, why it fit in this protocol, why it was needed. And that, talk about a labor. That thing was crazy how much hours I put, especially with the reference manager. That was like nuts. But we published that in September 2020, and it just got retracted like a month or 2 ago. And it got retracted because
that's like for a year.
It'd been up for a year, and they just took it down. And I'm so tired. Exactly, I'm so exhausted.
I know. I can't imagine.
That happened from an attack from a different quarter for a different reason. But basically, Paul Marek, who, his hospital has wanted to get rid of him for a while. He's a very public figure, very contrarian to the establishment. He's always pointed out when the establishment got science wrong, Paul's science has been superior and has been shown to be correct time after time after time in his career. And especially in COVID, these institutions are allergic to someone who's getting things right. Right, they need their little remdesivir, the little package of remdesivir and tocilizumab, and a tiny dose of steroid. You know, they want that stuff, that train to just keep rolling. And Paul was calling bullshit on that, so they wanted to get rid of him. And so he's endured a year of multiple myriad actions trying to get rid of him. And I don't know if you know, yeah, I don't know if you know this, but he just resigned last week. His clinical career is now over. He's no longer clinically employed.
We were on a call a little more than a week ago, and he was very upset.
Who was?
Paul.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sad to hear that. But if that's going to improve his life, then it's probably a good thing.
I think he's starting to. I think he's starting to. He was really so depressed and so miserable because it was attack after attack on his character and his practices.
Like mean shit, like stupid schoolyard shit that stays with you type shit.
Oh,
like,
the stuff that he's had to endure is crazy. Like he got a prescription pad. Him and two partners got their prescription pads stolen some years ago, and a bunch of scripts were written, for illicit drugs. And so it makes him look really bad because there was actually an investigation by the FDA, and he was actually cleared of wrongdoing. But the hit pieces that came out that he's prescribing illicit drugs without, that's just one thing. But he was harassed. He was accused of scientific misconduct on multiple occasions in the past year around studies that he was doing. They were saying that he plagiarized an IRB application. Literally plagiarize an IRB application. Is that plagiarism? When you're like submitting the design of a study because someone had a similar study. It's just bizarre. So he's done with all that. But one of the casualties was the paper, because the hospital saw our paper, and in the paper we had reported, just as like some slight supportive evidence, we reported the mortality rate at Paul's hospital where Math Plus was being used aggressively in the spring. And it was much, much lower than the worldwide mortality rates. And so we reported it, and the hospital flipped out, and they accused Paul of all sorts of things. Like, that's not data that, we gave you for research, as if there's research data and non-research data. That was actually openly available, widely disseminated data to all the staff of the hospital. It was like this rolling mortality. And then they freaked out because they said that we used the wrong denominator. We didn't use discharged patients. We just gave like what it was at the time. And because, it was like in the middle of the summer of 2020. And when they looked at 3 months later, when they saw some district patients then later on died, get this, the mortality rate went from 6% that we reported, it went up to 10%. And we were comparing it to the worldwide mortality rate, which was 23. But they flipped and they went after us because they said that we falsely represented the mortality rate because we reported it as 75% lower or 60% lower than it was. And we were like, the point's still the same, dude. It's okay, it's 6%, it's 10%, depending on the denominator. But they literally accused us of being willfully deceitful. And we tried to argue our case with the editors, and they attacked us so much on this paper that the editors were just like, we think you guys aren't being, I don't know, they just accused us of whatever. And also we're the FLCCC, so like, I think people just want to, the system doesn't like us. So they're whacking the paper. So now we have to find it a new home. But my colleague, Jose Iglesias, he's the one wrestling the reference manager, reformatting it and resubmitting. Because I said, no way, that's 200 references. I'm not doing it.
You didn't have a co-author.
Oh, you did. Anyway, so
fight people from now on. I'm like, hey, would you like to collaborate on a piece I'm working on? Here are the references.
Best trick ever.
Wow, that's crazy. I don't know how they sleep at night. I don't understand what's going on there. Like what? I don't know, man. I don't get it.
But isn't this, I think the interesting thing is that a lot, I'm still here.
Did you like the Jessica and Pierre show?
I did.
Welcome.
You guys can come on anytime and do this. I'll just sit back.
Actually, the next time I call you, Jessica, I'll be like, you want to just do this over Zoom with Ricky on a show? We'll make this a show.
Ricky.
You know I'm there. You could.
Exactly.
But what do you guys think about the idea that like this isn't a new thing? Like the problems with like peer review studies and the problems with science and being influenced by big pharma, and I just think it's been amplified. And I also think there's an issue with, like, for some reason, like vaccines, or at least this specific vaccine seems to be like it's the one product that big pharma is a part of that people seem to think is all based on morals and science, and there's no corruption. So it's like everybody can talk about the Oxycontin thing, everybody can talk about the lawsuits, the the lying about studies, all this stuff, all the times they've been sued, and everybody accepts that big pharma is for profit, and there's always going to be suits and ties that are going to try to figure out how to make more money. But then you talk about this specific vaccine, and it's like, no, this, not this, not that. It's almost. Do you think it has something to do with the fact that at such a young age we never really question vaccines? It's just one of those things where we're conditioned to believe they're always good, they're never bad, they've only done great things throughout history, so why would you question this vaccine? And that's so conditioned in our brain that we almost resist, and I wouldn't say us, but the average American resists even going down that rabbit hole of thinking that potentially this vaccine could be harmful. Do you think it has something to do with that? Because you go to a pediatrician, they tell you get not I don't, but with my kids, but typically most parents, they don't even question the schedule or how many they're getting or any. It's like so it's like little by little you're just conditioned to believe, like, oh, this is all backed by science, they're always good, they're never harmful, and adverse reactions are so rare that it's not something I even should concern myself with.
Oh, hold on. Although I want to answer this first, even though we have like a vaccine expert here, but because I want to talk about one part of what you just said. So a couple of things. The reality is that you're right. We've been told since we've been born that vaccines are this like undeniable major public health advance, right? That's unassailable and critical to maintaining and preserving the health of the population, right? And if you don't get vaccinated, you didn't do your part, and your vaccine status is threatening me, right? And so there's this whole belief system around it. And what's so scary, Ricky, is I don't know if you've read Bobby Kennedy's book, because I don't think we can have this discussion without talking about Bobby Kennedy, right? So if you look at him and what happened to him, now, first of all, he's an attorney who's done fantastic work in his career. He's always been he's been on the right side of fights. He's been trying to protect the environment and people's health. He's taken down huge corporations who've done really bad shit. That's what he does, right? And he reluctantly got involved in vaccines. And if you ever read about his origin story in vaccines, it's because he was an expert on mercury poisoning and mercury contamination of our water supply. And there was this whole host of parental advocates of children who'd been vaccine injured, and identified that it was thimerosal and the mercury in the vaccines. And they went to him, and he like pushed them away. And finally, some parent, because he wrote about this, some parent like came and said, I am not leaving until you read these papers. And so he reluctantly decided to look into it. He said within hours, he was buried in dozens, if not hundreds of papers showing the toxicity of mercury in the vaccines. Like, scientists have been writing about this for a while. So it's not like he invented and became an anti-vaxxer. He was overwhelmed by the science. So he started to try to advocate to try to correct this societal ill, right? Like he had done with other issues that he'd advocated for. And what happened was, this is what I'm going to say, is he poked the bear. So the pharmaceutical industry, what we're seeing now is this rapacious, like I said, I jumped a lot of F-bombs before, but the rapaciousness of the vaccine industry and their history of malfeasance is insane, right? We know that what they did with the swine flu in 1976, they already killed off a bunch of people and paralyzed people and did PR campaigns and also co-opted the agencies. I mean, this is like 50 years ago they were already doing this.
Yeah.
Can I share my screen, Ricky?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I share my screen. All right, you gotta enable me to share because I want to show you a graph which speaks exactly to what you've been raised on and what you've been told. Because this actually comes from his. It doesn't come from his book, but it's actually something he talks about in his book. Now, what do you see on my screen?
Measles mortality, pertussis mortality.
Yeah.
Mortality.
So you've been told, right, that the vaccines are solely responsible for the eradication, the scourge of a whole host of infectious diseases, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know where
this is the reality. This is the reality, is that the mortality and prevalence of numbers of diseases for which we're mandated from birth to take. Look at the impact that the vaccines had on these.
And we're seeing that in real time because
measles mortality. Look where the vaccine was introduced for measles. There was like almost no deaths anymore from measles. Pertussis, it was already going down. There were other public health measures that were doing this. Even polio, it was rapidly on its way down. And you don't see a sudden change in trajectory after the vaccines. It just continued down. Here on the bottom right, scarlet fever. Look at scarlet fever. I love this. There's no vaccine for scarlet fever. What happened to scarlet fever and death? I think actually they forgot to put the vaccine in, and it's probably somewhere around. Don't you think, Jessica? Vaccine was introduced here, and same thing with tuberculosis, right? I think we got the TB vaccine was introduced right here around 1920. Don't you think?
Yeah, just any spot.
Yeah, exactly. And so like we've been, now is when I have to go back to the famous blue pill, red pill. Like we've literally been blue pilled with these vaccines. And then this is only the lack of evidence showing huge efficacy in controlling these infectious diseases. This is that, and then you're not told about the horrors of the vaccines and toxicity. These vaccines happen to be the most toxic in history, but come on, HPV story, MMR with autism. MMR with autism, that's a real thing. We know that they buried that science. And
published study. It's a very real
I've had
thing.
Dr. Brian Hooker on the show. And, and the thing is, even that Vax documentary that got demonized, I kept telling people, like, that's not an anti-vax documentary. It's about specifically one cover up of a study. It's about a whistleblower. It's not an anti, and they did a great job demonizing it. But it also, so this is a thing I tell people, and what you're saying is so true. And I tell people, when people bring up polio, when people bring up these things, I'm like, you're seeing it in real time, how they can manipulate the way we perceive history, because they're doing it now. People are convinced, even though cases were already going down, there were suppressed treatments, as you know, and you've talked a lot about. They were there. So even the people who are dying didn't have to die, but they're going to give all the credit to the vaccine. So they're going to write history. And when my children grow up and they're old enough and they're like, you know what the hell was going on in 2020 when I was a kid? Let me go Google some stories and some newspapers, some articles written at that time, do some historical research and see what I come up with. You know what they're going to find? They're not going to find this conversation. They're going to find a headline that says COVID vaccine saved the world, got us back to normal, did all this stuff. So it's the same thing. Like you said, it's the same way they did that with all the past vaccines. So even people who weren't critical or skeptical of historical, I guess situations where they gave all the credit to the vaccine, you're living through it, where now you can see how they can write history in any way they want. They can give all the credit to the vaccine.
They're really good at what they do, right? Vaccines are safe and effective, and ivermectin's a horse dewormer, right? So if anyone believes anything in this pandemic, they know two things for sure. One is that the vaccines are safe and effective, and that ivermectin is a horse dewormer taken by anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is crazy that they're calling Dr. Robert Malone an anti-vaxxer when he got the vaccine, and he's been in the vaccine industry.
He had COVID and then he got the vaccine.
Steve Kirsch has been double vaccinated.
Right?
Steve Kirsch has been double vaccinated as well.
you guys are falling. Everyone's been duped. It's like you guys must enjoy being duped. I was thinking about this today. It's like Israel's like, wow, they're apparently, we're starting to wake up, I suppose is the best way to say it, because Omicron's here, and now they're kind of switching the narrative to, well, maybe we should just let this burn through. But they also started up with this fourth shot, and it's like, oh my God, like half the population has already run out to get the fourth shot, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, but it's like,
and they're about to, and the parents, so many parents are about to boost their kids. That they're
already, they're already doing
against Omicron. They're about to boost their kids against Omicron.
It's like, do you guys read at all? Do you you don't have
as
to?
mad as I get about that, because as a parent, I try to, I'm very outspoken, and anytime the conversation comes up, my wife gets mad at me, but I'm like, listen, if I don't put in my 2 cents and just share some real information, the propaganda is just going to keep spreading. So I feel the need to have to say something. And even if I don't stop them from doing something, hopefully I plant the seed of doubt. And, the blame, I almost feel bad for the parents, because in a way, some of it's their fault for not doing their own research and not being more skeptical of the information they're being given. But they're also, a lot of these people have not been down any rabbit holes. They're just everyday people, hardworking, normal people who put on the news. And same way they've been conditioned to believe that vaccines have only saved us of so many life-ending diseases, they also still believe that the media and governments are there to give you the information and protect you. And so they're just turning on the news. They don't know any better. So who should really get the most of the blame, I think? And it is the media, who's been lying. But the thing is, I don't want to understand why people have a hard time believing they would lie about these issues when the media, private corporations, and the government have colluded to lie about wars over and over and over again that we know will lead to casualties.
But Pfizer themselves, they've paid the most money in like fines over the years. Pfizer, not just, we're not even using the word big
They're
pharma.
criminal enterprises. They're criminal enterprises. In the last 20 years, just criminal penalties alone, and this is without the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma, right? With the opioids, that hasn't been determined yet.
Right.
But just that alone is $6 billion.
I know.
This is the 20 largest settlements, just the 20 largest last 20 years, 13 billion civil, 6 billion criminal. And that's not counting the opioids. For them
to believe that Pfizer's up to no good now. Like, how come, like, what that doesn't make any sense to me.
But listen,
now they care about you.
The biggest absurdity, there's no biggest absurdity, because they set records every day with the rapaciousness and the stuff they do. But over the summer or earlier this year, when ivermectin was in the headlines, right? Because it's an information war. And I'll tell you one thing, Ricky, is like, I feel bad for the parents as well, because what do you read? Who do you believe? Do you read some random podcaster and some doctor on a podcast who says one thing? Meanwhile, the institutions and the leaders in their suits, they come out, and the Faucis, and they say this. Like, why would you believe this guy who's dropping F-bombs and believe, the rather sympathetic figure of a Dr. Fauci, right? And so I don't really know what to tell them. And to be honest, I don't know that I would know as much as if I just didn't happen to be in the spot that I was with the colleagues that I have and the circle of people who are on the front lines collecting this data. So like, we have an inside view of the data, and I've been transformed in the past year. I think what I believed a year. I mean, I used to read the New York Times every day, like cover to cover, and I believe
I've also been transformed. It's a good way to put it. I say this like often, sorry to cut you off, but I just
no, please
tie the twin thing together. Like, I feel like I've literally gone through transformation. It's like, and I feel like it's an evolution. It's some way up. Like, recognition skills are sharper now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Like,
I literally, I have an iPhone and has the Apple News app. Right. And so it's just a digest of and literally, when you look at your phone, the little app thumbnails, you can read the headline of the top story. And that's where the thing that shows up is actually the most every day. It's the most egregious piece of propaganda. So like when I told you before, when I looked, it was just the thumbnail of the app. Like I got to see that, FDA approves boosters for 12 to 17-year-olds. And so like every day I just say, what's today's propaganda? And it's not even like, I think it's propaganda or it might be propaganda. No, it's literally propaganda. It's literally lies, indefensible. There's no science there. And it's actually horrifically damaging. So I'm seeing these assaults on our public health waged using the tools of media, which they control. And I mean, we're living in a movie. This is normally.
We are living in a bad movie.
You would go on a Friday night, you would take your girlfriend and have popcorn and be like, man, that would be crazy if we lived in that kind of place, right?
Right?
We're living in a movie.
It would be almost a.
I don't want to watch anymore.
This is getting too crazy, man. I'm shutting this off.
I want to see Titanic.
Exactly.
If you made this into a
More
movie,
inspirational.
we would probably say it's too unrealistic.
Oh yeah. No question.
I mean, the extent of the corruption, the extent of the lying, and it just, and then the long-term effects. I mean, you want to talk, you both have been in the restaurant businesses. I mean, before 2020, there was small businesses were blowing up. People were going to mom and pop businesses instead of the big box stores. People were much more cautious with where they were spending their money and supporting people that were part of the community.
Starting their own businesses.
Starting their own businesses, and they killed all that. They killed. I mean, they're barely surviving, and I mean, and then all the psychological effects, the trauma that kids are still going through in some of these states in their school systems with the masks, and you don't touch anybody, and don't it's like you're scaring the shit out of everybody. And eventually they're going to convince us to just join the metaverse where they don't have deadly viruses and you can go
literally like that creepy bugger on Facebook's metaverse thing, right?
That seems like
it's coming.
I mean, it's the long-term effects are just, and that's the other thing too, is like people made one COVID death more important than any vaccine death, than any person who was put on a ventilator that was told that they had no other treatments. I mean, you're just literally saying that like COVID deaths are the only thing that's important right now. And anytime you bring up anything else that would, the suicide rates, the alcoholism, I mean, people were depressed. People were, I mean, we need social interaction. It's so not natural to be apart from you. In prison, that's how they punish you. You're around murderers and killers, and they say, hey, how about we take you away and give you your own box?
Put you in isolation as torture. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, this parlor trick that they're pulling, it's not sophisticated, it's unsubtle.
Exactly.
It's like so obvious the shit they're doing. Like, for instance, and by the way, I can't really read, when I told you that I look at the thumbnail, like, because I actually can't open the thing and I can't read, the only reason why I just look at the headlines is because I just want to see what they're up to. There's no way I can read, but so I just want to check in. What's today's freaking insanity that they're perpetrating on the American people? So that headline I gave you before, but then the other one that I'm seeing, and I'm like, of course they're doing this, because if I was them, I would do the same. They're literally pretending that the mildness of Omicron, right? The fact that Omicron's not killing people is because of the vaccines.
Of course.
We're so well vaccinated that
and
and to try to inject facts into South Africa, they did very well with Omicron and they had 25% vaccine. So you want to put that in your little article that it's actually not the vaccines, it's just Omicron, and so I'm like, but of course they're going to write the article to get people to vaccinate against Omicron. And what you just said, Ricky, is that COVID, right? It's about nothing else, and they tricked, and by the way, they tricked the entire medical establishment, all the physicians in this country. They've been, brainwashed into believing, especially in the US, right? Their messaging is so good. Everybody in the ICU is unvaccinated. Everybody in the hospital is unvaccinated. So, and then they've actually done so well that you have physicians who literally are coming out now and saying, they're cracking, by the way, they're cracking, right? They're coming out saying I refuse to treat an unvaccinated, a physician saying, I refuse to treat an unvaccinated. So, which is, a whisker away from, I refuse to treat the alcoholic. I refuse to
Do
treat.
no harm, you mother.
No, I mean, it's literally like, really? This, and so the physician not only are pulling that shit, but they are, like you just said, Ricky, they've been so brainwashed that all they see are that, and believe, and by the way, I want to talk about something, actually, I want to hear if you know about this issue, Jessica, and they said, but they actually believe that all of the death in society right now is because of being unvaccinated, when the reality is, right, we now know there's lots of papers on preprints, not published, showing that excess mortality of the vaccinated is worse. So your vaccinated status actually gives you a higher risk of death from all causes, right? So they basically, they have in your COVID. Here's an issue that I want to bring up. Being in the hospital over the last year and a half, when I look into the electronic medical record, typically, especially Epic, which is the most common electronic medical record, the screen display when you go in, it's always the name is top left, and then you have some demographic information, and very clearly under the name now, there's a box for vaccination status.
Oh, no.
And almost everyone, especially in the ICU, it doesn't say unvaccinated. It says unknown.
Ooh.
It doesn't say unvaccinated. If they've been vaccinated, they'll have the dates of the vaccines, but otherwise the status is either unknown or vaccinated. Now, here's the thing. I have heard reports, and I don't know if you get in the same thing, but there have been people who said that their loved one died in the ICU, and in the record, they were unknown vaccination status, yet they'd been vaccinated. And one of my theories, and I'm wondering if this is how the US pulled this off, because you guys know, right? Israel and the UK, it's not 99% of people dying that are unvaccinated. It's actually the majority. So why is the UK and Israel data so different than the US? And I'm trying to figure that out. And this is my theory. I think that unless you got vaccinated, so let's say you're in a hospital, right? And hospitals are part of health systems. I think that unless there's a record of you getting vaccinated within that health system, so either that hospital or its clinics, then you will actually have your vaccine show up in your record. If you got vaccinated at a CVS or a Rite Aid or a Duane Reade or a Walgreens, you're going to be unknown. And I'm wondering if that's how they're able to get the doctors to believe. Because I got to tell you, I don't blame the doctors. The doctors are seeing patient after patient in ICUs who have unknown vaccination status.
I think
And so they literally believe, and that's not a data, that's not propaganda, right? That's actually, that's on the ground. They're looking at the medical record. They're seeing a patient on a ventilator dying, and they're seeing that the vaccination status is unknown. So the doctors are screaming and they're outraged that people aren't getting vaccinated. And I think that's the trick that's being pulled.
I think that you're absolutely right. There's a preprint paper that just came out about some people working at Kaiser Permanente who, it's not the same thing, but it's on the subject matter of status according to where you get injected, where you get your healthcare from, where your death certificate is made, blah, blah, blah. So they found that it's not the same thing, but it reminds me of it, that the number of myocarditis cases that the algorithm that they were using, I think from was in VSafe, I should really remember this. Anyway, it wasn't detecting all the myocarditis cases that were reported, and it had something.
When they were dicing up the data, it was a way that led to less reports. Somehow they did it so there's less reports.
It was where they were finally diagnosed, like, and how long after they were diagnosed, and if they were diagnosed at the same place where they originally went to the hospital, for example. So there was this this lack of coordination, which, okay, maybe there isn't nefariousness going on, but it doesn't matter because the end product is the same. They're reporting to these federal agencies or whatever, these numbers that aren't the right numbers, which is what I've been saying the whole time, and a bunch of other people. So this data botching thing, that's the subject matter now. It's just,
Do you think, Jessica, do you think, and Ricky, I'm going to ask you guys this because I kind of think I know the answer, but do you think the history books are going to get this stuff right?
No.
I think
History books are going to, what I'm reading in the papers, what the history books are going to say, they're literally going to say that the vaccine, like, even though like cases have exploded across the world, despite billions of doses of vaccines, they're going to somehow write a history where the vaccines were the savior.
The
Well,
savior.
I disagree a little bit. I think that
I'm glad.
Yeah, please. I want you to be right, Ricky. Please be right.
well, I'm trying to be optimistic. I really am. Jessica has been on the show a bunch, and a lot of the things that we first talked about on the show, and a lot of the people who had the courage to come on the show in 2020 and be outspoken about these things were so taboo and being censored everywhere. And now a lot of things that were super taboo in 2020 are openly discussed now with normies, and people are accepting the idea.
Like the lab leak theory.
Yeah, well, that and so
Good.
you also look at like the swine flu, right? Most people accept the fact that that was complete bullshit and propaganda. I'm hoping, that we have a similar experience where you can only suppress the truth for so long, and as long as all of us keep fighting and keep being outspoken and don't give in. And I think that there's a lot of, like you said, Dr. Kory, there's so many great people in this community. When I talk to a lot of the doctors that come on and a lot of the people that are outspoken, I mean, they're just such genuine people who are motivated by this fight for humanity, which is what it feels like. It feels like we're fighting for humanity.
Yes, we are.
And so many of us have put everything else on the back burner. I mean, this podcast and just getting these
There's nothing else.
And by the way, so Ricky, let me just tell you, this war is being fought by the people you talked about, the podcasters, the independent podcaster. I'm sorry, but that's where the information is. So before when we were talking about these poor people who aren't reading or doing this, like the answer is independent journalism, right? Because corporate media has been co-opted. Like if you're actually reading that stuff, you're just reading propaganda, and that has to be more widely known. And more people need to listen to your podcast and all the other podcasters, right? And and I think that also the more optimistic thing is a guy like Joe Rogan. I mean, he's getting very, very popular because he's able to.
He's the number one podcast in the world, and I think people enjoy him. And when I first started podcasting, he was a huge influence. Like I said a couple hours ago when we first started talking, he was a huge influence because I think when somebody talks casually like that and they're not just regurgitating information, you feel like I kind of know this person. Like it's a good reflection of who he is and his character. And I like that. And I think when you do long form conversations, you can only bullshit for so long. I think in time, who you are is going to come out.
Ooh, that's a good point. If you're going to spew bullshit, you want to hit it and get out, right? Because you can't, you can't endure a 3-hour discussion and keep saying the same thing over and over again.
And if you try, Rogan's going to nail your ass.
Right? Oh yeah. Oh, he'll be out, and he has done that. I've seen him do that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, it's the podcasters. It's this collection of really committed, courageous experts, right? And then the other thing that I want to bring out is that not only do I have this nice new circle of friends and colleagues, and Jessica, you're my friend, by the way. Like if I go to Israel, you and I are hanging out, so you give me a couch, so that much is clear. But I don't want to say that FLC. Yeah, I don't want to hang out with your spider. Actually, never mind. I'm getting a hotel, but I talk about, I don't want to say the FLCCC is the standard bearer, but what's so cool is that there is an FLCCC-like organization in every country in the world.
Yes.
The Australians, the Canadians, the French, the Dutch, they're out there and they're fighting, and they're a little band of brothers and sisters, trying to inject reason into a corrupt and broken system, and they're all on the outside. They're getting different amounts of blowback, and it's nice to be part of a resistance, a worldwide resistance, although the numbers are small, but the voices are loud, right? And
I think the resistance movements are always small historically, though.
Yeah.
This whole superhero in a cape thing, we all watch Marvel comic, or we read Marvel comics, or we watch the X-Men. It's it's always a small group of people, so not to
no, you're right.
make us seem like superheroes, but you know, it's kind of inspiring to be a part of
Yeah.
something authentic and unique that is based solely on ethics and integrity and truth and all the good stuff, you know, about humans.
We filter out a lot of cowards because a lot of people have been exposed. A lot of people that I thought would be outspoken, a lot of people that I think would, when the shit hit the fan, they would, you know, say, hey, you know what, I'll deal with the backlash. I'm going to say what's, you know, what I truly believe, or help expose some truth. A lot of people have folded with the pressure. They just don't want to deal with it. And to me, like, that's why I have so much respect for people who come on the show and then go on a lot of shows. I mean, just go on all the shows that go on. I mean, Dr. Peter McCullough, the day that his Joe Rogan episode was released, he came on my other show, the Union of the Unwanted.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is like it's like a big Zoom conference call with a bunch of just thinkers and podcasters, and I didn't think he was going to end up joining us because he told me he was going to join us, but then I'm like, his emails are probably blowing up. He's never even going to find the Zoom link in his email, and he still came on even after being on the big.
Of course he did. Yeah,
and it just shows, and I think it was a great reflection of who he is. Like, he really cares about getting the message out. He really cares about getting this information out. And when you talk to these people, I mean, and I'm sure you sense it even more than I do because you guys have met a lot of these people in person. Like, they truly care. They truly feel like this is life or death, and we're in this like spiritual battle with good versus evil. And I think a lot of people who can't grasp that, it's like it's almost like they don't believe evil exists. But I'm like, have you looked at just wars? Have you looked at Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan? You know, we just go, oops, yeah, we might have went in there based on lies. Yeah, some people died. Yeah, but whatever. You know, it's like they don't care. And throughout history, if you study history, since the beginning of time, there's always been people trying to control other people. There's always been people who think that they're the elite. They're the ones who should be the decision makers. They're the ones who should be deciding the path of humanity for the rest of us. And to think that now that doesn't exist, to think that, I mean, in the UK, they still have monarchy.
What you're saying, though, Ricky, is they're not benevolent, these leaders. And so,
no.
so what I love is Matthew Crawford, right? His Substack, Rounding the Earth, right? And for a while it was annoying me, but there's not an article he writes where he doesn't reference the Kunlangeta, right, Jessica? And like, but I got to tell you, as a belief system and as a structure for how society is so broken, you know, and I'll just tell you the theory really quickly. So the Kunlangeta is that there's a fixed amount of essentially sociopaths in our society, right? And they're born and they're uninfluenced by parenting, good food. You know, some people are just have no empathy for others. They will lie, cheat, rob, steal, take advantage of women, all of those things, right? So rapacious individuals. And when you look at people in jails or in prison, you know, a significant proportion of them are those Kunlangeta, or basically sociopaths, right? But it's also been shown that those qualities of a sociopath actually grooms them to be quite successful and make lots of money and become leaders of corporations and governments. And so we literally have a race of humans where sociopaths can become in positions of leadership. And that's another theory that helps explain what we're seeing. Because when you say, how could they possibly do this? Like, I look at a sympathetic person, someone with feelings and who behaves and, you know, knows how to act along others and, you know, is modestly caring for others. And yeah, listen, we're all selfish, right? We're all self-centered, but I mean, there's a degree. And then you see the stuff that's happening. And so, for instance, what's so clear is that Anthony Fauci is demonstrably a raging sociopath, right? And he's on television with this sort of somewhat benign, you know,
I am science.
Yeah, but it's literally a sociopath, right? And the book by Bobby Kennedy details that so well. Oh, hey, checkpoint. And you know, basically saying that this is a guy who's headed the United States biomedical industrial complex for 40
decades.
Does a benign and benevolent figure gets to keep that position for 40 years? Like, you think they give me that gig, or you get that gig, Jessica?
Oh, me, no.
No, the only person who can hold that is a sociopath, and they know how to find others. And this is crazy stuff. By the way, I am not sure that anything I said here is like cool by the FLCCC. So I'm going to say this: these are my opinions alone, and not that of the FLCCC. This is just me.
It's all about
Cups of coffee and Jessica Rose on a podcast. So
that's right. That's what we really want to hear.
But I'm going to tell you this. This is another light bulb. Is like, when I read Bobby Kennedy's book, like, it explained everything to me. It explained, and by the way, when I started the pandemic, I actually thought Anthony Fauci was a sympathetic figure in a tough spot.
I was an HIV researcher.
And I was like, I would hate to have his job. And, everyone's killing him everywhere. And I'm like, he's doing the best he can, man. This is like a shit show.
Yeah.
But then I realized it's actually his shit show,
Yes.
And he's propagating. Okay. Then suddenly along comes someone named Rochelle Walensky. And, I don't know why, and maybe this is biased. I'm just going to but a woman. So I figured you have the sense that she's going to be more likely to be benevolent, right, than some asshole man, right? And so I was like, okay, so this is a nice change, right? A woman, leader or whatever. And then I get to see that she's also a sociopath. She goes out on television every day and says
lies.
Unmitigated lies and lies and lies and lies.
It's just that simple, people. Lies. Just
so
lies.
Much damage. I mean, she is literally the propaganda machine of the United States government. So here's the other thought. The associated thought is, I was like, and I told Robert Malone this when we were hanging out at a conference a couple months ago. I said, Robert, how do they hire and find sociopaths? Like, that's like it's part of the system, right? They know who to hire. They don't hire the good guys.
I think they watch them when they're young in their careers.
You have to be capable of telling lies on part of the government and not giving a shit about the impact of those lies. And there you have someone named Rochelle Walensky. And I don't know her personally, but I'm only saying that because I know she lies, and I know she's lying.
So do I. Exactly. It's that simple.
The Kulanga.
They must find them when they're young, or hire them when they're young and train them and get them into the system and what's that word? Indoctrinate them.
Indoctrinate or groom or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but we build a system like Dr. Kory said, and I think Jessica, we've talked about this too. Like, we build a system that rewards people who have those traits. So you want to make it in the business world,
I'm not going to reward.
Yeah, I mean, morals can't be a factor. You can't worry about who's losing their job and if they have a family to feed. You got to look at numbers. How do I make
He's going blind or
all you care about is making money, and you have no concern for the deleterious impacts on the welfare and well-being of humans, then you're going to be really good at making money.
Yeah.
It's not to say that everybody successful in money has no morals, because that's not true at all. I've met some fantastically wealthy and incredibly humane individuals who are fighting this fight, but I think they're the minority. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's just the way the system's built. I mean, politics is the same thing. How do you make it in politics if you're not willing to bend the truth? And what you do is initially, even if you have good intentions, you initially maybe just start bending the truth. Like, okay, I can play this game and try to do it in a moral way. I'll just kind of bend the truth to try to, get the votes or put out this perception. And then little by little, you're like, wait, that guy's kicking my ass and he's just lying. So let me, you just realize like the only way you're going to get ahead if you play the game that's built. I mean, I've had Roger Stone on the show years ago, and one thing about Roger Stone, I know a lot of people don't like him, and probably for good reason, but he's also a person who gives you a little bit of a insight on how the game is played and how dirty it is. And same thing, I had Jack Abramoff on years ago.
Oh wow.
And same thing, like, I mean, I didn't have him on because I thought he was a great person. I thought he would let people have a better understanding of how corrupt the system is. When he comes out as one of the most powerful lobbyists ever, and he comes out and he tells you, like, hey, we give language to the politicians and say, hey, we need this in the bill, and they just do it. They don't even read it. Like, what does that tell you? The whole system is corrupt. You know, politicians spend more time trying to get campaign money than they do
Yes.
doing anything else. I mean, the whole system is built to reward psychopaths and people who don't have good morals. And like you said, there's exceptions everywhere. I know plenty of really moral people who are successful, but I think for the most part, it's probably easier to get there if you just don't care about who you're harming, and it's not even something that you're concerned with. And so it's a huge issue. I mean, psychopaths exist. I don't understand why people have such a hard time believing that they could intentionally suppress medicines like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine that could potentially help people. I don't know why people struggle with that. I don't know why they struggle with the fact that they could intentionally be giving this vaccine to young kids who are at no threat of the virus, and knowing that some of them are going to have heart issues and other long-term issues. I mean, it just, to me, I don't know what it is. Like,
Ricky, I like that you had those guys on, and I like what you said is that you didn't bring them on because they were these amazing public figures that you wanted to inspire people with, but it's because we need to learn about the society we live in and how it operates. And I just want to say that I told you guys I was really tired, but I was up till 3-4 in the morning. I was writing a Substack, which I was really trying to lay out like what's really going on with this ivermectin thing, that it's not a controversial drug. It's a corrupt drug. I mean, it's a drug surrounded by immense amounts of corruption and power in its attempts to suppress it. And so I'm trying to do the same thing. And like I said, we talked about this, Jessica, I'm transformed. I only know what I know now by accident. I happen to be at a particular place in history. I became an expert at a time during a pandemic on a particular drug, and I've had a front row seat from the inside, and I've been able to call bullshit on everything. Yes. And I put it in a Substack last night. I was like trying to catalog all of the bullshit that I've seen. I was trying to put it in some sense of organization, some narrative, right? Narratives. We're all about narratives. And I was trying to write my corruption narrative, which is like, that's not the narrative. It's not a horse dewormer. It's actually this. It's a highly effective drug that's being made into a horse dewormer by forces that need it suppressed, And so, I mean, I think we just got to keep sharing, telling the truth, right? And
just be persistent. I mean, that's the only difference between success and failure. It's persistent.
Yeah. And the other thing is, when you talk about like how, they just try to raise money and they, they're told to put language in the middle, they just do it. It's like, this is my aphorism. Giving a fuck is costly. Right? Like if you actually try to exert ethics and morals, it means you're going to have to sacrifice opportunities. You're going to have to sacrifice money. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot of things. You're going to have
what else is there to do? That's how I feel.
Sacrifice your job. I've had to leave 3 jobs in the pandemic. The last one, I let go. And it's like, it's because I've been telling the truth. And, I think I'm going to be all right. I still have that naive belief. I keep doing what I'm doing. It's the right thing. I'm going to be okay. I think
you're going to be more than okay.
Yeah, I think
we'll all be vindicated in some way, some plane of existence. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I got to tell, my wife's a little bit tired of the losing the job thing. It's getting a little old in the house, but I think I'm always telling her, I got this plan. I'm going to do this. And then, here's my thing this week, just because I'm like, I think I'm doing really well on Substack, honey. Maybe this is a new career for me.
Well, you never know. I mean, Substack's blowing up.
It could be, man.
I'm doing okay. And yesterday was the first time at the end of my little piece where I was like, hey guys, could you think about being a paid subscriber? Because I'm going to start putting every once in a while something beyond a paid wall. Because first of all, when I write, Jessica, I actually will work and rework and revise and edit for hours. Like I have a feeling when I see other stuff, like I see Robert Malone putting out polished essays every day, 18 paragraphs. And I'm like, that would have taken me 12 hours of revising to come up with that thing. And so like, I'm literally putting a lot of hours into writing these Substacks. And so
my latest one is 3 days and counting. I'm tackling this really hard paper, and I can't put something out there unless I know that it's going to have some kind of relevance for at least a few people. So, which means I have to do a really good job explaining what they did in the paper. And it's this paper that says that Omicron probably came from a mouse background. Yeah, so it's a really high level paper, and it's not that I don't know what they're like saying, but in order to convey that to other people, it's like I really have to know my shit. So I'm like going over it and over and over it, rewrite, and I'm like, okay, did I get point mutation right? Did I get non-somatic mutations
Oh,
right?
geez.
Yeah, so it's like
That's a whole different morass. If you're talking about high level science, that's something you even more have to sweat over. So
well, yeah, exactly, because it's like I don't want to be taken out by someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
yeah.
It's not that I don't think I do, but it's like to make something difficult easy to understand is the hardest thing in the world.
I know.
I don't like long substacks.
You
I
do
like
a good job of it. You do more than a good job of it, Jessica. So,
Oh,
hey,
thanks.
is this a good time to pause and plug our Substacks?
Let's do that.
I'll put the links in the show description, and I can't stress this enough. I tell people all the time, I'm like, this is a value for value show. Try to give some value back if you can, and that doesn't mean financial. I mean, just share the show. Tell people about it. Spread it as far as you can, but also support people like yourselves who are putting so much on the line for this. I mean, it's just people have been told for 2 years now, like the vaccine will get us our lives back. We've seen that's not the case. The way you get your life back is helping expose the truth on what's going on, and that means supporting people like us. So
you're doing it, Ricky. I appreciate what you're doing. I thank you for having us on. Not that I'm cutting this off, but I was going to bring up, like, we're going to do this for 6 hours, Jessica?
Well, we usually go for 3.
Ricky, how long do you guys go?
We got 47 minutes left, my friend.
Wait, I thought we were doing an hour. We're already 2 hours in, man. Are you guys crazy?
We go into this weird like vortex where time.
Are we Joe Rogan again? 3-hour podcast of just shooting the shit. I like it.
Yeah, it's easy though, right? It's flow. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, typically I'd be nervous if a guest could do 3 hours, but you could definitely do 3 hours. I mean, anybody
with this one over here, this character, I think we could do.
Oh, this character?
Yeah, that character with Checkpoint and Jessica. Are you kidding me? That's great. That's great. All right, Jessica, I'm going to give you some helpful advice. Not helpful. You're going to laugh at it. But can we do something about your background? Like, what the fuck? You got like 2 plugs in the wall and like a thermostat. Can you do? At least I am respectful. I have like books. I have a fireplace. I mean, come on, man. What kind of game you running there? So I'll tell you a funny story. So Paul Marek is really jealous of my fireplace. So his wife last year got a big piece of oak tag and drew and colored in like a raging fire. So Paul, like when we had Zooms, he would take the oak tag and like put it behind his chair. Yeah, could you just hold that plant behind you? Yes. Yes. Now already your game has gotten up a few notches right there.
I have a pine cone and a
Pine
pen.
cone and a plant.
All right. I'll change my background just for you.
Yeah, just put a shelf there with a plant, and then your cat, your cat would perch on. Oh, that's kind of cool. I like that.
You like that? How about this beach?
Oh, beaches are cool. I like beaches.
Northern Lights.
Oh, beautiful. That becomes you right there. I like the Northern Lights for you. That's
all right.
You look very astral there. That's cool.
Ooh, look at my hands.
How about, guys, can we do this again maybe instead of going 3 hours?
Yes,
just
absolutely.
Maybe we could come back and check in to see where the world is going.
I'm on an acid trip here.
Yeah, well, what always amazes me is that Jessica's the one who actually should be getting some rest, because what time is it there? Well, it's actually now
15.
Okay, yeah, it's not. Yeah, she's been on my other show a few times. She was on the episode Dr. Robert Malone when he joined us on the Union of the Unwanted, and that show starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm in Massachusetts, so and she was on that show. I don't know.
What time is it in Israel at that time?
Like 3 a.m. or something.
I think this summer when I was by my pool having a drink at like whatever time, 9 p.m. I think I was talking to you in Israel, and it was 4. I don't know what time it was, and we were chatting on WhatsApp. So anyway,
well, writing. I think I used to write music, and I know Jessica's a musician also, but I'm sure it's similar even when you're writing your articles. I'm sure at night it seems like that's when all your ideas come to you. I know Jessica got a kick out of when I was talking to her about the power of leisure, like how important leisure time is, because your best ideas come to you when you're not distracted by anything. And so it might be in the shower, it might be when you're going for a walk. And so I think it's easier to tap into that at night because you're less distracted. Your phone's not going off. There's not chores or things that need to be done that you're concerned with. And there's something peaceful about the quietness of the night. And it's almost like when it snows too. We haven't got a lot, but in living in the East Coast, you get the snow. It's like that first snowstorm. It's like it almost seems like the snow filters out all the sound. So it's like you go outside, it's like silent.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Remember that.
you bring up another
snowfall.
You just brought up another thought. Is like, so this is a joke that I do on Ryan Cole, and I keep beating him up for this, but like, I am so sick of being surrounded by these wonderful people who are so multidimensional, skilled polymaths. Like Jessica Rose, she's a fucking surfer, mathematician, musician, like biologist, and like it's like
these days
with these wide-ranging skill sets. I'm just like a loudmouth doctor, man. I don't have like
you're my twin. I know you play the banjo.
So like no, actually I tried to take up guitar and I actually quit after 6 months because I just couldn't. It was sad. I couldn't do like
another instrument because the guitar and I don't get along either.
Yeah, I couldn't get along with it. But here's the other. So Ryan Cole, not only is he a brilliant guy who has such a deep knowledge about all these different topics in the pandemic, and he's a pathologist. He's not supposed to know everything about infectious viruses and vaccines and all this stuff. But then he's like a high level, like master woodworker. Like I've seen his stuff. It's like some of it's on display in museums, and it's like, and I'm just like,
no way.
I'm so impressed with him. I'm like, of course you're a high level master woodworker. It's like, I'm like who are these people? And then like Robert Malone, he raises horses.
Yeah.
Besides saving the world, he's also like a horseman. It's like these people are so cool. Why stop being so cool, everyone?
Isn't that neat though? Like people are really cool.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
And
I was a woodworker as well, but I won't talk about that.
Oh, of course you are, Jessica. Please. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Fine furniture. I'm sorry. I have to throw that. It was a huge part of my life. I also built a house.
Of course you did.
Of course I did.
But I think having all those hobbies, either
I never wrote a book though.
Oh, I helped write a book. Yeah, I wrote a book.
There you go. Who's talking?
All right.
Well, do you guys want to plug your Substack? Plug any websites? Any ways of for the time being? I believe you're.
Well, first of all, I would be remiss. My primary responsibility, and I wanted. Yeah, I'm going to share one last thought that you brought up, Ricky. Is like with Peter and the amount of stuff that he shows up for. Like, I basically say yes to any opportunity to be interviewed, go on a podcast. And it's not because it's not really an ego exercise anymore. I'm actually pretty exhausted. It's actually, I feel responsible. Like I really do feel like it's about information. This is a war of information. And if I say no and try to take a break, I feel like that's actually harmful. And so I have to show up. And I'll show up anywhere, anytime to talk to anyone. I usually don't have as much fun as I had today. But actually most of the time I do enjoy it, especially the podcasters, right? Interviews I really don't like, television I don't really like, but I just try to show up. And then I guess going back to the last thing, so plugging, I would be remiss. So I have to talk about the FLCCS. Number one, right? I'm the president and chief medical officer of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance. It's a nonprofit organization who've only sought to develop the most effective treatment protocols for COVID. And so I would like to ask you if they want to learn about how to treat COVID, how to prevent COVID, how to deal with long haul COVID, how to deal with post-vaccine injuries. We got a protocol for that. Okay. And so you go to flccc.net and you can learn all about us, what we do, and what we recommend. And I will say that we're not the only game in town. There are other organizations, there are other societies who've come up with treatment protocols, and there's lots of different stuff that works. If you want to see what we do and what our protocols are, go to that one. So that's the flccc.net. And then Me, I guess I have a Substack now. It's Medical Musings was the word. You like that? Nice title, Medical Musings. It's just me, musing about medicine. Yes, isn't that so? Do you think it fits for me, or should it be like medical yelling or
Medical yelling?
rage? I was like, no, it's just me.
Oh my God, I'm gonna steal that. Medical rage jokes.
It was me musing at 4 a.m. last night, Jessica. Exactly. I had my little tea, my bedtime tea, and I was musing. I was musing about the horrific corruption around. So it's called Medical Musings, and I think it's Pierre Kory's Substack, whatever. I think if you look on, I'm going to go to my dashboard. It's pierrekory.substack.com. Right. So that's my plug.
And you're still on Twitter for the time being, which is nice.
Oh yeah, I'm Twitter at Pierre Kory. By the way, you know that Jessica, I have all these followers on Twitter, and I've been trying to get verified. The little blue check.
Okay.
And they won't. Just because you don't want someone to steal your name and start doing other stuff, but they won't verify me. You know why?
Why?
I couldn't figure it out. They kept denying me. Because they say you have to be a public figure, so you have to show that you're the head of an organization, or that you have a Wikipedia page, or people have searched for you on Google, right? You have to have some sort of public persona. And if you do that, they give you a blue check. And I have all of those things, and I submitted them, but they kept denying me. And I'm like, why the fuck are they? Come on, I'm like a dude now. I got like a public presence, How come I can't get my little blue check mark? And then I read between the lines, and there's policies. Basically, this is my interpretation. Yeah, they don't verify assholes. if you're shouting at everyone all the time, I'm always throwing bombs at the NIH and FDA. And CDC. I'm always pissed off on Twitter and tweeting about corruption and stuff.
You get a T-shirt that says "I am unverifiable."
Yes, that's pretty cool. So, anyways, I stopped asking to be verified, and I figured I'd just be an outlaw, and so. Anyway,
through Twitter.
Actually, my Substack's bio or whatever is "I am a dissident." That's all it says.
Oh, interesting. There you go.
Well, there's
I'm not going to get blue check marked anytime soon either.
Yeah,
YouTubers and just TikTokers that have blue check marks, and Dr. Kory can't get a blue check mark. That's ridiculous.
TikTokers, really?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's just tons of celebrities, people who aren't famous for anything important, and I think people for a while, I think Rogan had a hard time believing that this was all intentional. He would always say, well, YouTube has a lot of videos they got to keep up with. Oh, Twitter, I think they're doing their best because there's a lot of stuff going on. It's not that at all. And I think he's noticing that when you look at the way the Dr. Peter McCullough episode ended and the way the Dr. Robert Malone episode ended, I mean, Rogan almost felt like he was he saw a ghost. He's just he realizes how and then also I listened to Lex Fridman, who I like Lex Fridman, but I don't know why the fuck you would have the CEO of Pfizer on his show. He did a show recently with Michael Malice, and he was talking about how Rogan text messaged him and was all rip shit when he found out that he was having the CEO on his show. So I'm like, oh shit. So he's legit on board and understands this, because he usually doesn't take compliments well. If you notice in the past, anytime somebody talks about how big his show is or how important it is, he kind of nah, yeah, I get it. It just all happened. He
doesn't want to go into that. Yeah, I think.
But if you look at the way Dr. Robert Malone, that episode ended, Dr. Robert Malone told him, he's like, thank you so much for having me on. And it's such a big platform and the work you're doing, giving us a voice. And he didn't push back against that at all. He it's almost like he's acceptive of the fact that great power comes great responsibility. And I think he realizes that. I think he does understand that. He almost has a responsibility, because there's no platforms nearly close enough that will give these people a voice, or give yourself a voice.
Like I said, it's the podcasters, man. It's the independent folks, the ones that are live on YouTube. We're going to get now. Luckily Joe has Spotify that's not messing with him, right? And the other thing that this is not a plug. This is just a call, man. We need help, right? It can't just be this little band of brothers and sisters. So you got to come out, please. Just come to DC on the 23rd. Please march. we're fighting against all of this totalitarianism of censorship and propaganda.
I'm so
and
glad you remembered this.
the
Yes.
jabbing. And, for me, my pet issue, again, because I don't get too involved in the vaccines, although we did talk about it today, is the autonomy of the physicians. I want to take back medicine. Medicine got stolen from us. When you talked earlier, Ricky, it is unprecedented for me not to be able to use a medicine. It's never happened in my career where somebody literally removed a medicine from the hospital formulary so you couldn't use it, and or be told that you can't use something, or ever have a pharmacist who refused to fill something that the physician felt was in the best interest of the patient. And so, these are the kind of things that we're marching about, is these mandated, restrictions against the practice of medicine and the freedom to care for your patient. We got to get some freedoms back here. And, will the march, lead to that? You can't sit on your couch. I mean, I don't know what the march necessarily will accomplish, but we got to do something. And by the way, that's a part of a worldwide march, man. People are getting up off their couches around the world and fighting back about this. And the U.S., that's one place that hasn't marched, right, Jessica? You've seen like the Netherlands, the Dutch, the Italians, the French. They're getting up and they're fighting back. The Australians have done it. What has the U.S. done? What have we done? No one's got, now come on, man, we got to jump in the fight. Usually U.S. leads this thing. And so DC, January 23rd, let's march, man. We got to end this thing.
Oh, you're muted, Jessica.
Yeah, get up off your couches and do something, for the love of God, if nothing else, to learn about what's going on. Yeah, I'm so glad you remembered that. Definitely. I'm not going to be able to be there, but I'm going to be there in spirit.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to get across the ocean sometime.
Aren't you going to build a boat and you're going to do a solo sail? Like, is that your other skill set? You're going to tell me, like, you're a master sailor?
Almost became a master sailor 2 years ago, right before this shit hit the fan, man. I swear to God. And I didn't do it because, I don't know, I chickened out at the last minute. It was a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
It is a lot. And I'm kind of, it's funny. I'm a surfer and I'm afraid of the ocean. A little bit of fear about the deep, dark water. I used to live in Newfoundland, and I have watched the Titanic movie for the first time since it came out like 80 years ago or whatever.
Right.
Love this movie now. I'm not a Leonardo DiCaprio fan, but I just love this movie. And I think it's because it taps into my Newfoundland roots, because it sunk off the ground back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wow.
Anyway, but my Substack is Jessica, like Jessica with an R, .substack.com, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
More importantly, work related. Well, no, that's also related to what I'm doing. But I have a website where you can see VAERS updates and pretty pictures. It's idonotconsent.netlify.app. So it's https://do/not/consent.netlify.app. It sounds.
Could you make it more complicated, please?
I told her already. I'm like, but you can purchase a easier URL. You can. And
I know. And I didn't buy knowledge balls, and we shouldn't start talking.
I love it. I/do/consent/.lify, whatever you just said.
/ I do not. I know, I'm Ricky. I looked into it, but then all this other shit happened and it got pushed aside, and I'm like, and I need a secretary.
Yeah, I hear you.
I need help.
URLs are super cheap. You could buy.
I know, like $10 or something.
And then all you have to do is put in that URL put in the URL that you want the new one to direct it everybody to, and then you could pick something easier. I'm sure Jessica Rose might be taken, but I think knowledge balls, that's an inside joke. That's what last time we were on. I don't know how. I honestly, I don't even remember how it got brought up, but some way.
I think I used it in a serious way, like not like a ball of knowledge became knowledge balls, and then it just evolved from there.
Yeah, and then a bunch of really bad jokes came afterwards.
There you go.
And then next thing you know, I had people tweeting me and sending me messages on Instagram and all the platforms, just like #knowledge balls. The first first one, I'm like, what?
Did it?
Like, is someone trying to send me a dick pic? What's going on here? And then all of a sudden, I'm like,
Oh
Let
no.
me share a knowledge ball with you. I got a little knowledge ball to share, you know? I like that.
Snowball, you know,
Yeah.
bigger, rolls down the hill.
Little ball of knowledge. I like it. And sometimes they roll down the hill and get bigger, right?
Sometimes, you know.
Totally. Well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to push a snowball down the hill, and sometimes it melts.
Oh, snowmen, and you know, like.
do knowledge balls shrink when it's cold? I don't know.
Oh, brilliant.
I'm asking for a friend.
There you go. Anyway, you guys are awesome, man. That was fun. That was super fun.
I laughed really hard. My head
Glad to
hurt.
have a chat.
Well, yeah, when you guys get a chance, it doesn't have to be today, but in the day or two or whenever you get a chance, send me the links to anything you want in the show description. I'll make sure to put it there, and I'll make sure to send you guys the links to the show once it's up and live, and hopefully we do this again in the near future. And keep up all the work you guys are doing. I am just a conduit to listeners, to people like yourselves. So you guys are really on the front lines doing all the hard work, especially with the references and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't have to do it.
I don't bring that up again.
I'm bringing up the trauma.
Exactly.
But enjoy the rest of your day and night, and hopefully we talk again in the near future.
Thanks,
you.
Ricky. Bye, Jessica. We'll talk again.
Yes, we will.
Take care, guys. Okay.